TrueStory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot. Today, TrueStory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Emma Wright woke up to the muffled sound of her 3-year-old daughter, Mia, giggling as she pushed a plush unicorn across the floor of their master bedroom. The morning sunlight streamed through white shutters, painting soft honey-colored stripes on the pale gray walls. Emma swung her feet onto the plush cream carpet, careful not to wake Mia, and took a deep breath. Today was a Saturday, which meant a slower pace, except when you were raising a toddler and balancing a demanding career. At 26 years old, Emma worked as the marketing director for a tech startup in downtown Dallas. She loved her job, innovative projects, a vibrant office culture, and the chance to shape emerging products. But lately, between business trips, late-night presentations, and caring for Mia, Emma felt stretched thin. Her auburn hair, usually pulled into a sleek ponytail, had begun to betray a few unruly strands. Underneath her perfectly tailored blouse, faint circles shadowed her hazel eyes. "Mommy," Mia's tiny voice echoed from the living room. Emma's heart jumped. In one swift move, she scooped up her daughter and carried her out into the cozy living area. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the wall, stocked with picture books and framed family photos. A plush cream sofa faced a large bay window overlooking the quiet suburban street of Frisco, just north of Dallas. "Good morning, baby girl," Emma whispered, brushing a loose curl from Mia's forehead. Mia twisted around, eyeing her toy unicorn. "Did you sleep well?" Mia nodded vigorously and held out the unicorn, her eyes bright with excitement. Meanwhile, Emma's mind flickered to the day ahead. A marketing brainstorm session at 10 a.m., a quick call with an overseas client, and a lunch meeting she had promised to attend. The weekend always felt like a treasure, until something unexpected threatened to shatter it. Down the hall from the living room, the faint clink of coffee cups and soft murmurs drifted from the kitchen. Emma peeked around the corner to find Linda Wright, her mother-in-law, busily scraping scrambled eggs from the skillet into a large glass bowl. Linda, age 54, had been a high school English teacher before retiring to watch over her grandchildren. Her silver-streaked brown hair was swept back into a neat bun, and her floral apron, embroidered with "Best Grandma Ever," looked newly laundered. She hummed a soft tune, completely absorbed in her morning ritual. "Good morning, Linda," Emma called softly, not wanting to startle her. Linda turned, wiping her hands on a tea towel, and offered a warm, if somewhat distracted, smile. Good morning." Linda's blue-green eyes brightened when she saw Mia. "How's my favorite grandbaby?" She scooped Mia out of Emma's arms and planted a kiss on her forehead. Mia cooed happily. Emma hugged her daughter close before stepping into the kitchen. "She slept well. I'm thinking about whipping up some pancakes today, unless you'd prefer to take her to that playground near Preston Road." Linda shook her head. "I'd like to keep her here, actually. I made extra scrambled eggs. She loves them for breakfast." Her gaze lingered on Emma for just a moment, appreciation mixing with something else, an unspoken question. Emma returned the look with a small smile and focused on Mia, who was already reaching for the bowl of eggs. A quick glance at the clock on the stainless steel refrigerator confirmed it was 8:15 a.m. Emma's mind flickered to Jack, her husband. He was a 29-year-old real estate agent, known for his calm demeanor and polished professionalism. He often worked long hours meeting clients, touring properties, and negotiating deals. Jack's deep brown eyes and dark hair had invited Emma's attention back in their college days, and 5 years of marriage had only deepened their bond. But lately, she'd noticed tiny fissures when he changed topics mid-conversation or returned home late without explaining. Speaking of Jack, Emma wondered where he was. She checked her phone. No new texts, no missed calls. Strange. He had told her he'd be back by 9 o'clock. The open garage door hinted he'd left early. She shrugged off a moment of disquiet. Jack transported clients around the Metroplex all the time. Maybe he got caught up finalizing a Spanish Oaks listing. Finishing breakfast preparations, Emma placed a stack of pancakes on the table, drizzled with maple syrup.
Mia, dove inigerli?
Linda and Emma ate quickly, exchanging small talk about Mia's wool sweater that looked better suited to autumn than a warm Texas spring. Then, with a kiss on Mia's head, Emma announced, "I need to head out by 9 to meet my team. Do you mind watching her until Jack gets back?" "Of course," Linda replied, her tone warm but carrying an undertone that Emma couldn't quite place. "Take care, dear." As Emma gathered her purse and stuffed a diaper bag over her shoulder, Linda's eyes flicked again toward the empty driveway. 5 minutes later, Emma stepped outside onto the driveway, closing the white garage door behind her. The morning sun lit up the brick facade of their two-story home. Across the street, neighbors sipped coffee on their front porches. In her black sedan, Emma's reflection looked tired. She turned the key in the ignition and thought, "I hope Jack isn't stuck in traffic." Only half a mile down the road from their home, Emma's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Your husband owes us. We'll be there today." Her heart clenched. She swiped to open it, but the message deleted itself. No phone number. No signature, just a glimpse of red text on her lock screen before vanishing. Anxious, Emma called Jack's cell. Straight to voicemail. She called Linda back. No answer. Emma's palms suddenly felt sweaty on the steering wheel. Her mind flashed to a passing memory. She glimpsed a foreclosure sign on a property Jack showed last week. But he had assured her that client would close soon. Never in her wildest concerns did she imagine facing threats demanding immediate payment. She shook her head, inhaled deeply, and dialed a trusted friend at work to alert her team. "I'm dealing with a personal matter, something urgent, so I'll be late." As Emma pulled into the parking garage near her office, the morning's anxiety settled like a heavy stone in her chest. She texted Jack one last time, "Call me as soon as you get this. It's important." Then she locked the car and took the elevator up 12 floors to the sleek glass office. Beyond the polished chrome turnstiles and frosted glass walls, her marketing team waited. They greeted her with friendly smiles and a fresh pot of coffee. Emma forced herself to focus, handing out agendas for the 10 o'clock brainstorm session. But every slide she clicked through felt distant. Her mind returned to Jack's unopened texts and that cryptic threat. She kept her phone close, waiting for any sign of reply. By 9:45 a.m., no word had come. Emma cleared her throat in front of her team and said, "I'm going to keep this brief today. Personal emergency, need to step out to take care of it. I'll be back by noon if possible." Her colleague Mark nodded sympathetically. "Hope everything's okay." Emma packed up her papers and headed back down to the parking garage, heart pounding with each step. She had no idea how fast the day was about to spiral downward. But for now, she carefully slid into her car, started the engine, and texted Linda again. "Mom, have you heard from Dad? Something's wrong." No reply. Emma braced herself, breathing deeply. Whatever waited at home, she took off down Preston Road toward Frisco, ready to face it head-on. Emma sped down the wide, sunlit streets of Frisco in her black sedan, her heart pounding with each red light. She replayed the moments from this morning over and over in her mind. The cryptic text demanding payment, the empty driveway when Jack was supposed to be home, and the vague sense of dread at the pit of her stomach. Parking garage after parking garage. She'd driven closer and closer to their two-story brick home, but her racing thoughts made each block feel like a mile. Pulling into the driveway, she killed the engine and sat for a moment, pressing her palms to her face. The air was thick with the scent of freshly cut grass, a contrast to the sudden storm brewing in her life. She slid her phone into her purse, took a deep breath, and stepped onto the driveway. The front door stood slightly ajar. That was the first sign that something was wrong. Jack would never leave the door unlocked. Emma's pulse slammed against her ribs as she nudged the door open. The hallway was empty, with no hint of the usual morning chatter you'd expect from a busy household. She glanced left toward the living room, where Mia's small bicycle lay askew as if abandoned mid-play. The kitchen was to her right, and she crept forward, calling out softly, Mom? Jack? Anyone? Inside, the kitchen's overhead light was on, illuminating the polished granite countertops. Emma spotted the glass bowl of scrambled eggs, still warm, steam curling into the air. Linda must have been in the kitchen earlier, but now there was no sign of her. Instead, there were 3 broad, imposing figures standing over the table. Their sleeves were rolled up, revealing muscular forearms, and they wore dark-collared shirts with embroidered logos that read, Maverick Financial, a name Emma didn't recognize. One of them held a thick folder in his hand. As one of the men looked across the table, his eyes flicked toward Emma. He spoke with a calm, chilling certainty. You must be Mrs. Wright.
I'm Gavin Brooks.
We're here on behalf of Mr. Cardenas. Your husband owes us $250,000, due as of today. Emma's breath hitched. What? She said it too quietly, throat dry. Jack didn't tell me about any debt. Who is Mr. Cardenas? There must be some mistake. Gavin's face remained impassive, bald head gleaming under the fluorescent light. No mistake. We have the contract right here, he said, pressing a large manila envelope toward Emma. This contract bears your husband's signature, as well as a physical imprint of his thumb on the affidavit. He agreed to these terms 3 months ago. The principal and interest totaled $250,000. That money was due this morning. We need payment now. Emma's hands trembled as she took the envelope, opening it to reveal a crisp copy of a loan agreement. The top line read, Borrower, Jack Wright. In bold letters, the terms stated 18% annual interest with a 3-month repayment deadline. She flipped through the pages. Her heart sank as she saw Jack's signature scrawled plainly at the bottom of the last page, along with a thumbprint. Beneath that, a bright red stamp bore the words, Authorized Guarantee. Signature verified. Jack has been traveling for meetings, Emma stammered, startled at how little she had known. He didn't say anything about taking out a loan. I swear I had no idea. The second man, a lanky fellow with short brown hair, stepped forward. Mrs. Wright, if payment is not rendered immediately, we will be forced to repossess your assets. That includes your home and any other valuables. Our employer, Mr. Cardenas, will see to it that you comply. He is a patient man, but his patience wears thin after the deadline. Emma's mind raced. Her salary as a marketing director, even with bonuses, would never cover a $250,000 obligation within a day. And Jack's salary as a real estate agent, unlikely to clear it either, at least not in a lump sum. The final man, broad-shouldered, with a thick beard, added, You have until 5 p.m. today. After that, notices go out to local law enforcement. We're authorized to seize any vehicles, jewelry, electronics, anything of equivalent value. Emma felt tears prick at her eyes. She reached for her phone to call Jack again, but the men watched her carefully. Putting it back, she swallowed hard. Is there any paperwork you can show me that verifies where Raleigh, or Mr. Cardenas, got my husband's signature? I mean, a notarized copy, something? I need to see the original private settlement or any approval letters. Gavin shook his head. We operate in accordance with federal lending laws. We have the original signed document, a copy for your reference. I can't show you the private side of our lender's records. But you can see Jack's signature and thumbprint here. They're legitimate. We took a photocopy before returning the original to your husband. Emma slumped, tracing Jack's signature with her fingertip. She recognized the handwriting, that swooping J in Jack, that small loop in the K. Jack's signature to a T. It must be real. But Emma refused to believe Jack could have borrowed such a massive sum without telling her. Listen, she said, her voice shaking as she faced the 3 men. I don't have the money. I can't transfer that amount in 24 hours. Is there any way to renegotiate? Maybe extend the deadline? If I can come up with even a portion, maybe he can refinance? The second man's lips quirked in a faint, unamused smile. We gave your husband the opportunity to extend. He chose not to. We have no further arrangements for extension. Payment by 5 p.m. or repossession starts within 2 hours thereafter. Emma drew in a ragged breath and turned to look at the folder again. Her mind whirled. How could Jack keep something like this a secret? She tried again. Is there any way I can call my bank now, get a cashier's check, or wire transfer? If I could get at least $50,000 or $100,000, could we stall? Gavin exchanged a glance with the other two men. His tone softened fractionally. If you can produce $100,000 within 1 hour, we can consider a partial stay, certainly. The balance, $150,000, would remain due by 5 p.m. Emma's pulse pounded. 1 hour, she repeated, eyes narrowing. She had to figure out, where could she find $100,000 in the next 60 minutes? She worked as a marketing director for a startup. Her base salary didn't even approach 6 figures in a year. This was impossible, unless Jack had hidden resources somewhere. Swallowing hard, she nodded. All right, I'll try. But you have to leave this document with me, so I can show my attorney and my bank. Gavin pushed the envelope back at her and said, We'll leave a copy. But we have to keep the original in case of default. We'll check back here at noon. If you can't produce at least $100,000, we begin seizure of assets immediately after 12:15. Understood? Emma nodded numbly. She watched them gather their jackets, turn, and leave through the front door as abruptly as they'd come, leaving the envelope and a heavy silence behind them. For a moment, Emma just stood alone in the now-empty kitchen, the echo of that cold threat reverberating in her mind. The window over the sink revealed a perfectly manicured lawn, a mailbox that read right, and a neighborhood of identical-looking houses stretching down the block. It felt surreal, like the homeliest scene imaginable, and yet, somehow, she felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Hands trembling, she slid open the envelope and studied the photocopy of the contract once more. Jack's signature looked exactly as she'd seen scrawled on purchase agreements over the years. That distinctive J, she recognized every swoop. Underneath, beside the thumbprint, was a guarantee clause in bold red. For emergency purposes, the borrower agrees that failure to repay may result in immediate asset forfeiture. Next to it was a red stamp reading, verified by notary public. How could Jack sign this without telling her? Emma sank onto a stool, running a hand through her hair. A sense of betrayal washed over her, not only from Jack, but also Luke, and now the shadowy figure of Mr. Cardenas, who remained an unseen pressure behind it all. Propping the folder open on the counter, Emma dialed her bank's customer support number. Her fingers fumbling on the touchscreen. The line rang, and a polite voice greeted her from the other end. Thank you for calling First Choice Bank. This is Tanya speaking. How may I assist you today? Swallowing, Emma said, Hi, I need to arrange a wire transfer. An urgent one. Possibly up to $100,000 by noon today. Is that possible?
Pause.
Then, ma'am, for a wire of that amount, we'll need 2 forms of ID, your account number, and we normally process same-day wires if requested before 11 a.m. But you'll need to come into the branch to sign a wire authorization form. Wire cutoff is typically 3 p.m. local time for same day, but Emma's throat tightened. And take cash out of a CD or savings? Again, a brief pause. A cash withdrawal of $100,000 will take at least an hour or 2. You'd need to have that amount in a liquid account. If it's in a savings account, we can do an immediate withdrawal. If it's in a certificate of deposit, we'll incur penalties if you break it early, but yes, we could arrange that within an hour, assuming we have the funds on hand. We're open until 5:30 p.m. today. Emma thanked her and hung up, hands trembling. Her mind raced. She'd just $40,000 in a savings account, barely enough to cover half of the partial stay. Her 401k was locked, her CD would penalize her heavily, and she certainly didn't have $100,000 lying around in cash. She needed the miracle. Setting the contract photocopy down, Emma dialed Jack's number again. Straight to voicemail. She held back tears. The clock on the microwave read 10:32 a.m. She had only 90 minutes before that partial payment deadline passed. She bolted to the living room, scanning the shelves for anything valuable. Framed photos of their wedding, stacked books, Mia's pastel toys. None of it seemed salvageable for a bank loan. A quick glance in the corner showed a small oak coffee table, a laptop, and a stack of designer handbags by the front door. Each of those, too little, too insignificant. Mia toddled into the room, clutching her unicorn. "Mommy," she chirped. Emma forced a smile, crouched down, and ruffled Mia's hair. "Hey, sweetheart. How about we color together for a little while, okay?" Mia grinned and scampered off to retrieve crayons and paper. Emma used that small moment of tenderness to steel herself. She stood, paced to the window, and stared at the street. Inside the driver's seat of her car, her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She answered on the third ring. "Mrs. Wright?" A male voice crackled through. "My name is Ramon Alvarez. I'm a private investigator. I understand you've been receiving some unusual messages. If you want, I can do a quick check on any liens or judgments filed against Mr. Wright's name. Perhaps even track down the original lender." Emma's heart leapt.
Yes. Thank you.
"But I need to know where Jack could have obtained the money. And if there's any way to stall these loan sharks. They gave me an ultimatum, $100,000 by noon, or they repossess everything." Ramon paused. "No guarantees, but I can start now. Do you have Jack's financial statements, mortgage records? Anything that might show additional bank accounts or loans?" Her mind flicked to the safe tucked under the bathroom sink where Jack kept their joint documents.
Yes.
"I have copies of his bank statements and a mortgage printable from our online account. I can fax them or email them right now." Ramon said, "Fax that to 1-877-555-PICT 7428 and I'll pull public records on any suspicious filings. But if I find nothing, we know it was likely a forged or private arrangement. I'll call you in 1 hour with any updates." Emma scribbled the number on a sticky note, then rushed to the bathroom. On tiptoes, she lifted the wooden lid of the white-painted cabinet under the sink and untucked an envelope stuffed with papers, mortgage statements, bank statements, a safety deposit box ledger. She pulled out the binder that contained Jack's account details. Holding the binder, Emma gave herself a moment to steady her breathing. Mia's laughter drifted down the hall. She forced a gentle exhale, thinking, "I can do this. For Mia. For myself." She laid the documents against her desk in the study while grabbing her phone. By 11 a.m., Emma's phone lit up with a text, "Payment due by noon tomorrow? Or go after her today." The same ominous messenger. The time displayed above the message read 11:00 a.m., exactly 1 hour from the partial payment deadline. Emma fought back tears, clutching the steering wheel as she slid into the driver's seat again. She keyed her GPS to the nearest First Choice Bank branch, only 5 minutes away. As she waited at a red light, the phone rang. It was Ramon. Ramon, voice brimming with urgency. "Mrs. Wright, I pulled collateral filings under Jack Jesus Wright. That's his full name, and found nothing. No new mortgages. No liens, no judgments, no second deeds of trust. The contract you have is probably from a private party, not recorded in the county. I'm searching deeper for any shell corporations or trust accounts. But right now, we have no lead. If you want to delay them, you have to show up with cash, cashier's checks, or notarized proof of bankruptcy. Otherwise, they'll proceed at 12:15. Emma swallowed hard. 12:15.
Got it.
I'm heading to the bank now. Thank you, Ramon. She hung up, vision narrowing. Bank.
Cash. Fast.
Priority 1. Get to First Choice Bank. Priority 2. Find at least $100, 000, or face losing everything. Inside the bank, Emma's heart felt like it might leap out her throat. She approached the teller counter, clutching her driver's license. I need to withdraw $100, 000 for my savings, she said, voice trembling. The teller looked at her sympathetically. Do you have an appointment? For such a large withdrawal, we usually need 24-hour notice. But let me see if I can pull some funds. Minutes stretched into agonizing eternity. Another teller checked her account balance, $40,000 in savings, $25,000 in a money market account, and a $30,000 certificate of deposit scheduled to mature next month. Combined, it totaled $95,000, just shy of the $100,000 she needed for the partial stay. Teller Sarah leaned in and said quietly, "If you want to break that CD, you'll incur a penalty, maybe 10%. That'll knock you down to about $27,000 net. You still won't have $100,000, unless you can borrow or upload additional funds." Desperation clawed at Emma's insides. She thanked Sarah, dashed out of the bank, and hopped back into her car. She had 30 minutes left before noon. Running red lights, legally. She pressed the phone to her ear and dialed Caleb's number. Caleb was Jack's business partner, a slab of reassurance in the storm. "Cal? It's Emma. I need a favor. Can I meet you at Parkwood Title Company right now? I might need a short-term loan or some escrow funds." Time slowed as her phone rang twice, then a click. "Emma? What's wrong?" Emma inhaled. "Caleb, I just found out Jack took out a massive private loan. $250,000 due today. The loan sharks are here. I need to show up with $100,000 in cash in 40 minutes, or they repossess everything. I'm short. I can't pull it all from my accounts. I know this is insane. I need at least $50,000 from you, just to stall them." A long silence. "Emma, I didn't know Jack was in trouble." Caleb's voice had that careful edge, like walking on wet ice. "I'm at a listing appointment right now, but I'll do my best. Can you meet me at Parkwood Title in 10 minutes? It'll be tight." Tears pricked Emma's eyes as she reversed out of the bank's parking spot.
Yes.
"Thank you so much." She screeched into the Parkwood Title Company parking lot with 10 minutes to spare. "Lord." A friendly notary at the window waved for Emma to come inside. "Lord, I need a cash-out refinance appraisal, or some alternative, gas money," Emma said breathlessly, seeing the panic in her eyes. Lord fetched the branch manager, Leonard. Leonard, a tall man in his early 40s with graying temples, met Emma at the desk. "Caleb called and said you were in deep," he said quietly, scanning Emma's face. "Let's see what we can do." Sketching a quick plan, Leonard explained, "If you can sign a limited home equity line of credit, doc right now, you can access 75% of your current equity. But your mortgage balance is $250,000 and your home is appraised near $400,000. You'd qualify for about $100,000. But only if we can notarize it and get a lender's signature today. We have to expedite an appraisal." Tears welled in Emma's eyes. "Can I do it in 30 minutes? They're coming back here at 12:15 to seize my assets." Leonard nodded with quiet urgency. "We can do a desktop appraisal and have you sign electronically. That will give you a credit advance up to $100,000 by noon. But you need your ID, your original mortgage statement, and Jack's permission." Emma swallowed hard. "Jack's unreachable. How do I sign something on his behalf? It's his name on the property." Leonard's eyes flicked sadly. "You'll need a power of attorney, if Jack signed over POA to you. Otherwise, nothing we can do." Emma's heart sank. She'd never thought to ask Jack for such a document. "Is there any other way to stall?" Leonard hesitated. "We can temporarily tape off any liens for 24 hours if you file an injunction with the county clerk's office, but you'll need a lawyer to file it. We're not a law firm. We can't submit that docs for you." Emma nodded numbly, stepping out of the office with the empty Helic form in her hands. Each step felt weighed down by dread. She had 20 minutes left before noon. She typed rapidly into her phone. "Han, we need a POA. Email me." Then she dialed her best friend and attorney, Megan. "Emma? What's wrong?" Megan answered immediately. "No time. I need a temporary injunction against loan sharks in Collin County. File something to stall them for 24 hours so I can get a proper loan or sell a CD." Emma's voice trembled. "Give me everything, the contract, names, addresses, the loan shark notice." "I'll do it right now," Megan said, crisp and calm. "Fax me those docs in 10 minutes." I'll e-file for an emergency injunction to keep them from touching your assets until we sort this out. That gives us time to breathe. Text me anything else you have." Emma breathed in deep, nodding to herself. "Thank you, Megan. You're a lifesaver." She ended the call and walked back to her car, stomach twisting. The driveway looked pristine and quiet, like a facade. Inside, Linda would be waiting for answers. Only Mia remained unaware. Emma shook her head, feeling the walls close in. Waiting for Megan's injunction to file, Emma sat in the warm Texas sun, folding her fingers around the fiendish loan contract. Her phone buzzed, and her world threatened to implode once more. "Unknown number. Don't bother stalling. 12:15 is non-negotiable." Emma's vision blurred. Noon was 12 minutes away. The clock on Emma's car dashboard glowed 12:01 p.m. She sat in the driver's seat, breath uneven, hands clenched around her phone. The last text from the unknown loan shark number had felt like a punch to the gut. They would return in 14 minutes to seize her home if she didn't produce $100,000. Megan was working on filing that emergency injunction, but no one could guarantee a judge would sign it before the men arrived. Emma stared at the empty driveway, willing the pavement to swallow her whole. From the passenger seat, Mia's small face peered up at her, clutching her favorite unicorn plush. Emma rocked the seat back and forth, trying to steady her racing mind. "Mommy's just figuring out why Daddy signed that contract," she muttered softly, tears slipping down her cheeks. In that vulnerable moment, her phone rang. It was Luke. She hesitated but answered immediately, thinking maybe he could explain. "Emma?" Luke's voice trembled on the other end. I need to tell you everything. Please, just meet me out front." Emma swallowed, wedging her phone between ear and shoulder. "Where are you?" "Outside. I'm at the front door. I don't want to cause more trouble, but I have to do this." Emma drew a shaky breath. "Okay, I'll be right there." She scooped up Mia and carried her into the living room, where Linda was quietly folding laundry, her face drawn and pale. "Mom, Luke's here," Emma said softly. Linda looked up, concern etched in every line of her face. Before Emma could say more, she rushed past Linda and out the front door into the glaring Texas sun. Luke stood on the driveway, shoulders hunched, avoiding her eyes. He looked smaller somehow, gaunt, haggard, shifting on his feet. "What's going on, Luke?" Emma demanded, kneeling to meet his gaze. Mia squirmed in her arms, clutching her stuffed unicorn. I didn't know how to tell you," Luke said, voice cracking. He swallowed and reached into his jacket, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper, an old high school ID with Jack's name photocopied onto the back. "I did it. I signed his name on that contract." Emma's breath hitched. She tried to digest his words. "You signed Jack's name? You mean you forged his signature?" She held the unicorn a bit tighter, as though bracing herself. Luke nodded, eyes misting with tears. "I'm so sorry. Caleb tried to talk me out of it, but I was desperate." He wiped his nose on the back of his hand. "Let me start from the beginning." Emma nodded, though her entire body felt like it was slipping out from under her. "Go ahead. I need to know exactly what happened." Luke closed his eyes briefly as if steeling himself, and then began to speak in a low, trembling voice. Luke, voice quavering. "Caleb was right. I shouldn't have, but I was trying to help my friend, Caleb Ramirez. He's known me since we were 5.
Emma.
He's a good guy. A month ago, Caleb's mom had major surgery, emergency appendectomy. The hospital bill alone was $60,000, and his dad's insurance didn't cover everything. Then his car broke down, and he lost several shifts at the auto shop he works at. He was barely making rent for his apartment in Garland. He came to me panicked, saying they needed $100,000 to bail him out of a lawsuit some kid he'd hit with his car, although Caleb said it was an accident. The kid was taken off life support, but the family is suing for wrongful death. They wanted a $200,000 settlement. He only had $50 in his checking account. I thought, he's like a brother to me. I have to help." Emma's throat clenched. "But That doesn't explain forging Jack's signature.
Luke.
I'm getting there, I promise. Caleb, he approached me and asked, "Can I use Jack's name? Your brother puts down big deals all the time. They'll never question it." I said, "No, absolutely not." But he cried, "Emma, you should have seen him, pale, shaking, saying his dad's medical bills were over $100,000 already, and now this lawsuit. He asked me to just sign Jack's name and take out a private loan. I'll pay you back," he said, "and you can handle it however you want." Luke paused, swallowing hard. Emma crossed her arms, holding Mia, who was now softly tugging on Emma's blouse. Luke, voice dropping to a whisper. "I lied and told him I had gut problems, that Jack was out of town, and nobody would notice if I used his name. I got a private lender, some guy named Omar Elias out of Plano. They never recorded it, so there's no public record. They just needed Jack's signature and his thumbprint. It was some weird mobile notary thing. The notary came to me late at night. I gave them a photocopy of Jack's driver's license that I'd scanned, but I traced the signature from a real closing document in the safe. And that thumbprint, I used olive oil to soften my fingerprint and then pressed it onto the stamp pad they provided. It was scary, but desperate times, right?" Emma raised a hand to stop him. "And you thought you could manage $250,000 within 3 months? That's impossible."
Luke.
"I thought Caleb would pay it back. I believed him. I even gave him my credit card to charge as much as he needed. In the first 2 months, I gave him anything I had, my savings, my part-time job earnings. But after that, he went off the grid. No calls, no texts. And then 2 weeks ago, Omar called me. He said, 'Your brother's name on a $250,000 contract. If the money's not here by today, we come to collect.'" Luke's voice shook to the finish. "I tried to reach Caleb, but he vanished. He left town, Emma. I looked everywhere, but I can't find him." Tears slid down Emma's cheeks. "Luke, do you realize what you've done? Jack, he has no idea." Luke. "I'm so sorry. I tried calling Jack when I realized I couldn't pay, but his phone goes straight to voicemail. Mom's worried. I wanted to tell Jack myself, but I was scared. I knew he'd be furious. I thought I could fix it before he found out. My head just kept saying, 1 more month, you'll have the money." But there was no money. Emma's mind swirled. Betrayal, anger, heartbreak, all mixed into one. She took a step back. "You gambled with my family's life. Did you even think about that? My career, my marriage, everything could be gone." Luke nearly whispering, "I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I had to tell you before they came back. I'm so sorry." A long silence stretched between them. Emma held Mia closer, feeling the child's warmth against her chest. She glanced at her mother-in-law, who had silently walked out onto the porch. Her lips pressed into a tight line. Linda's shoulders shook as she put a hand on Luke's shoulder. "Son, you should have come to us. We would have fought this together." But her voice wavered. Betraying her own guilt, she'd never ask Luke what he did with his time or why he seemed so anxious. Luke burst into tears. "Mom, Dad never told me what to do. I didn't know where else to go." Emma closed the distance, kneeling again in front of Luke. "You understand the loan sharks will come back any minute, right? They'll destroy everything we own to recoup their money." Luke.
Yes.
"I know. I've tried calling every friend and every savings account I have. There's nothing left."
I'm sorry.
Emma's chest tightened. "We have minutes, Luke. You need to call Caleb again. Maybe he'll respond and pay us off, solve this somehow." Luke's face drained of color.
He's gone.
"I checked hospitals, jails, college dorms. He's vanished. He didn't leave a forwarding address." Emma's heart hammered. "All right, then we do what we can. Get inside.
Call Megan again.
Figure it out." She touched Luke's cheek. "But you need to face the consequences. I don't know how we'll fix this, but you can't hide." Luke wiped his eyes. "I'll do whatever it takes." He turned to go inside, and Emma followed, holding Mia. Inside the house, Emma shut the front door and locked it behind her. The three of them gathered around the kitchen island, the $250,000 contract photocopies splayed out like a sinister centerpiece. Megan's injunction was still pending. 12:15 was now 11 minutes away. Linda paced, wringing her hands. How does Jack not know? He'd have seen payments coming out. Emma shook her head.
He never agreed to this.
There are no logged withdrawals in his official bank account. It was a private deal with Omar. Nothing's recorded publicly. She cleared her throat. Megan's filing an emergency injunction right now. We need to prove they can't seize our home until then. But Megan said we need evidence of forgery, proof that Jack's signature was not willingly placed there. Luke needs to sign an affidavit. Luke nodded and sank into a stool. I will. Anything. Emma took a breath. Mom, call Mr. Brooks at Parkwood Title. I need a certified copy of Jack's deed and mortgage statements. We need to show our equity, that this loan is fraudulent. Then Megan can push the injunction through. We have 6 minutes until they return. Linda picked up her cell and dialed quickly. Emma turned to Luke. Luke, contact every friend you know. Maybe Caleb isn't completely gone. Maybe he's in hiding. Try one more time, or at least find out if he's alive. If we can get him to pay, maybe they'll release us from this. Luke nodded with a determined look, digging into his pocket for his phone. He opened his contacts and tapped Caleb's name. No connection. He tried calling other mutual friends. No one knew where Caleb was. Meanwhile, Linda returned from Parkwood Title with a short letter in hand. They emailed the certified deed and a copy of our mortgage on Carriage Hill Road. They say put this in front of Megan's office, and she can get it filed before 12:15. Emma texted Megan. Got deed/mortgage. Forwarding now. File injunction. Deadline 12:15. Seconds ticked by. Emma checked her watch. 12:06 p.m. 4 minutes remained. A quiet dread pulsed in the air. Suddenly, a black SUV pulled up, screeching onto the driveway. Emma saw one of the men, tall and broad, step out. He looked up at the house and then approached the front door. Emma's heart jolted. She grabbed Mia and retreated to the kitchen's far end, where the stairwell led upstairs. The front door crashed open. Voices, impersonal and harsh, filled the hallway. Gavin, voice echoing. Mrs.
Right.
We're back. Where's that check for $100,000? Emma peeked around the corner. The 3 men who identified themselves as Maverick Financial stormed in. Gavin's cold eyes locked onto the pile of mail on the kitchen counter, then flicked to Emma, Linda, and Luke. Gavin, we gave you a partial payment offer at 12 o'clock. Now it's 12:08. Where's the money? Emma swallowed, clutching Mia. We have an injunction. My attorney filed it. Ask them. You can't seize anything right now. Gavin's face was stone. Injunction?
Show me. Now.
Emma raised her trembling hand, reaching for her phone. She tapped Megan's voicemail. Megan, urgent. We need that confirmation right now. Meanwhile, Linda handed Gavin a printed copy of the deed and mortgage, stamped with the county clerk seal. Gavin, reading it swiftly. Humph. This only shows ownership. It doesn't vacate our claim. He threw the paper onto the counter. My men, start inventorying. One of them stepped toward the staircase, as though to head upstairs. Emma's world narrowed. Her body quaked. Maya's eyes widened behind her curls. She launched herself forward. Stop. This is our home. With a flicker of impatience, Gavin cut her off. Attorney's order or not, we have a right to reclaim collateral. He motioned, and 2 men spread out, marching up the stairs in unison. Luke sprang forward, not thinking.
No.
You can't go up there.
He blocked their path.
Gavin's lips curled into a cold smile. Boy, step aside. One of his men shoved Luke backward. Luke stumbled, hitting the coffee table, and Emma gasped in horror. In that instant, a car horn blared outside. Emma turned, and through the front window saw Megan's black sedan screeching to a halt. Megan leapt out, briefcase in hand, pushing past the loan sharks without hesitation. Megan shouting, I have an emergency injunction signed by Judge Sanders. issued at 12:10 p.m. to temporarily restrain any seizure of the Wright property. Drop this right now. Gavin's eyes flicked to the back of Megan's hand, where a court-stamped page was taped with a bright yellow sticker that read, "Emergency Stay, Collin County Court." The loan sharks froze, uncertain. In that moment, Emma felt the last thread of panic snap. Gavin snapping the paper shut.
Fine.
We hold off for now. But the balance is still due at 5 p.m. tomorrow. And if you fail then... He spun on his heel. Move it, boys. As the three men filed out, Emma sank to her knees. Lily cried out, and Emma pulled her close. Luke stood trembling, a hand pressed to his cheek from the shove. Linda collapsed into the nearest chair, tears streaming. The men had accepted the injunction for now, but the threat still hung heavy. Megan knelt beside Emma and Lily. You're safe for 24 hours. We'll push for a temporary hearing as soon as possible. But you must prepare for that 5 p.m. tomorrow deadline. Emma nodded. Exhaustion washed over her. She hugged Mia and then wrapped her arms around Luke, who leaned into her with his head bowed, remorse in every breath. I'm so sorry, he whispered. Emma closed her eyes tightly. In the midst of this chaos, she realized, tomorrow, more would come tumbling down. But right now, Liam's life anchored her. Mia's giggles from the couch echoed. She would fight for her family, no matter what. Emma remained on her knees, Mia tucked safely in her arms, as Megan closed her legal folder with an authoritative snap. The three loan sharks retreated down the driveway, thumping into their black SUV. In their wake, a heavy silence settled over the Wright household. Emma's heart pounded, her mind still reeling from the revelation that her beloved husband and adored brother-in-law were both entangled in a $250,000 nightmare. For a moment, nobody spoke. Linda Wright, Emma's mother-in-law, sat slumped in the modest wooden chair by the kitchen table, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Luke, Emma's 23-year-old brother-in-law, stared at the floor, tears glimmering in his eyes. Mia's small legs kicked in recognition of the tension, and she sniffled against Emma's chest. The clock on the wall read 12:20 p.m., just 10 minutes since the loan sharks had departed. Emma took a steadying breath and rose to her feet. She carefully set Mia down on the living room rug, where a bright pattern of toys lay scattered. Jamie the stuffed unicorn gave her a sad look. Emma touched her daughter's shoulder. Go sit with Grandma, sweetheart, she whispered. Mia toddled toward Linda and clambered onto her lap. Linda wrapped Mia in a shaky embrace, her voice trembling. My precious girl. Emma turned and walked back into the kitchen, where Jack stood frozen, leaning against the counter. He met her gaze with guilt-laden eyes. His smart navy blazer hung limp, as though the weight of the loan documents had drained the very life from him. Everything about him, from his well-cut slacks to his classic black Oxford shoes, now seemed to pale against the stark reality of his family's crisis. Emma inhaled deeply. Jack, you need to explain right now what the hell is going on? Her voice was level but undeniably fierce. I just found out that Luke forged your signature. He took out a $250,000 loan in your name. I've been scrambling to prevent loan sharks from taking our home. Jack's jaw clenched and unclenched. He took a slow step forward, hands pressed into the pockets of his slacks. Emma, he began, his voice low. Don't Emma me, she spat, crossing her arms. Her gaze flicked to Linda.
Mom.
How long have you known? Linda's lips trembled. I didn't know until just now, Emma. I promise. Luke didn't say a word. I'd have stopped him if I had any clue. She looked to Jack, eyes brimming with tears. Jack, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? Jack's shoulders slumped, as though crushed by guilt. He took a hesitant step toward Linda. Mom, I didn't know until 2 days ago. I got a call from Omar. My phone was on silent and I missed it. Then I asked Luke, and he confessed. I was going to sort it out. I promise I was trying. Trying what? Emma cut in. Trying to stall loan sharks? You think I didn't check my phone? I begged you to call me as soon as you got any warning. But you didn't. You stayed at some client meeting and never once called or texted me back. So, I found out from a text from some anonymous number. Jack ducked his head. I know. And I'm sorry. I was embarrassed. I thought, if I could pay it off quietly, no one would know, and the family would be safe. He shook his head. It was a stupid plan. Emma's eyes burned with anger. You were going to let us live in this house, knowing it could be seized any second? Knowing I'd have to beg for my life to loan sharks? Did you even think about me or Mia? You always put your clients first. Always. Linda's voice trembled. Jack, honey, please. Your wife is upset. But you can't blame everything on yourself. Luke made a decision without your knowledge. Emma whirled on Linda. Mom, I know you love Luke. I love Luke too. But he acted in your son's name. So you can't just pretend you didn't know or that you'd have intervened. He had to cry on your shoulder in the basement or behind closed doors, something. You have every right to ask questions. Linda's cheeks flushed. She looked between Jack and Emma, her knuckles whitening as she gripped the arms of the chair. It's not that I didn't know, she stammered. It's that I didn't have the faith he'd do something like this. I never imagined. I can't believe my baby boy was singled out for fraud. Jack grimaced at the word fraud. Mom, this was Luke's doing. If I'd known earlier, I would have stopped him. I gave Luke money from our joint savings, $15,000, thinking he was helping Caleb. I had no idea he'd gone behind my back. I'm just as betrayed as you are. Emma's throat tightened, but she pressed on. Then why didn't you tell me? Why did I have to piece it together on my own? Why wasn't I your partner in handling this? I found out about the loan when loan sharks were knocking on my door. Not yours. Jack flinched, clearly swallowed by guilt. I thought I could handle it on my own. I wanted to protect you and Mia from worrying. I believed I could sort it out without involving the family until it was fixed. That's patronizing, Emma shot back. You decided I needed to be shielded, that I was too fragile to handle bad news? Newsflash, I'm not fragile. I'm a capable woman. I can handle my own plane landing in a storm, yet you kept me in the dark because you thought it would be easier. She paused, her eyes filling with tears. Did you ever think about how hard it would be for me to be blindsided by 3 men threatening to take our home? Jack looked down, his voice thick. I did. But I thought I had enough time to fix it. Time, Emma echoed, her voice rising. Time wasn't on your side. By the time I found out, loan sharks had a deadline of noon. I called you a dozen times. I texted you. Nothing. Did you even think to call me back? Jack's shoulders drooped, and he ran a hand through his hair.
No.
I was on a call with the Reynolds deal. I didn't hear the calls. And by the time I checked my phone, how did you not see a missed voicemail from a private number labeled urgent? Emma pressed. I don't understand how you could be so out of touch. We're supposed to be partners. Jack's voice cracked. I know, and I'm sorry. I should have been there. I was a failure. I don't have a good excuse. Linda rose from her chair, stepping between them. Stop it. Both of you stop. Emma, if you'd give me a chance, I would have done something for Luke. But you needed him. Her voice broke. And Jack, I raised you to be honorable. I never imagined you'd keep secrets. But you love Emma, and you love Mia. You both do.
Now.
We need to work together instead of tearing each other apart. A bitter silence followed Linda's words. Emma looked at her mother-in-law, as though processing the lines on her face for the first time. She realized Linda was torn between defending her firstborn son Luke and protecting the marriage she had vowed to support. For a moment, Emma's anger wavered as she understood how painful it was for Linda to watch her sons make such reckless mistakes. Emma exhaled slowly, lowering her arms. Mom, I know you love Luke. But what Luke did affects all of us. I just wish. Her voice cracked, and she clenched her jaw. Jack swallowed, stepping forward. Emma, I'm sorry for hurting you, for failing you, for everything. I will do whatever it takes to make this right. I'll call my lender, meet with my real estate partners, explain the situation. I'll empty my retirement account if I have to, sell everything I own, just to fix this. But I need you, your trust, your help. Emma's gaze softened at his words, but she still felt raw. Okay, she said quietly. But I need to see action. We can't handle this by ignoring each other. We have to face it together. She turned to Linda. Mom, help me gather all the documents, Jack's bank statements, property deeds, mortgage statements, everything. We need absolute transparency. Linda nodded, tears lingering in her eyes. She rose to her feet and moved to a side cabinet, pulling out a leather-bound folder, holding Jack's paperwork. Her hands trembled. I'll get Jack's statements. I want to help you, Emma. Jack moved toward the cabinet as well, opening it and retrieving a separate manila folder. I'll bring my laptop. We'll compile every financial record we have. He looked at Luke. And Luke, you need to give me every bit of information about Caleb, where he might be, any record of transactions. We got to track that money. Luke's face was pale, guilt etched on every line. I will. I've been calling old friends, checking hospitals, even bail bond offices. It's like Caleb disappeared off the face of the earth. Emma took in Jack's expression. Earnest, devastated, determined. She realized that beneath his mistakes, he wasn't a selfish man who had abandoned them. He was simply overwhelmed by shame and fear. But that fear had cost them dearly. She squared her shoulders. We start now, she said, voice firm. Jack, download your bank statements. Linda, gather the deeds and mortgage information. Luke, give me anything, phone logs, text records, Caleb's last known address. Megan said if we can show Judge real proof of forgery and lack of recorded liens, they might freeze the loan shark's claim indefinitely. As Linda fetched the property deed, Jack flicked open his laptop on the kitchen counter, logging into his bank account. Mia toddled between their feet, clutching Jamie the unicorn and peeking up at her parents with big blue eyes. Despite the chaos, she felt safe in her mother's embrace. Emma took a deep breath and straightened her spine.
Mia.
Go play with Grandma, she said gently, nodding to Linda. Mia darted off, chasing after Linda down the hallway. Emma turned back to Jack, her expression softening. We'll fix this. But it has to be together, no more secrets. Jack nodded, his eyes misty. Together. I swear. Linda placed a wrinkled hand over Emma's. We are family. We'll face it as one. No matter what. Her voice cracked with emotion, and Emma felt tears welling once more. She squeezed Linda's hand in response. Luke lingered by the doorway, wringing his hands. I'm so sorry, he whispered. Then, glancing at his brother, he said, I'll find Caleb. I promise. Jack placed a hand on Luke's shoulder. Thank you. That means the world. Minutes ticked by as they gathered documents. Mortgage statements stamped with recent dates, bank transaction records spanning 3 months, screenshots of credit card statements showing Luke's transfers to Caleb's account. Emma felt her resolve solidify. The alliance between husband, mother, and brother-in-law was tentative, wounded, but at least it was formed in earnest. Just as Jack printed the final PDF of his most recent bank statement, Megan's text came through. Injunction granted. Temporary restraining order effective until tomorrow afternoon. Court hearing scheduled for 3 p.m. in Collin County. Send docs ASAP. Emma exhaled in relief, pressing her hand to her chest. We have relief for now, but the real battle begins tomorrow, at 3. Linda looked between them, her face lined with exhaustion. We'll be here, every step. But promise me, no more secrets? Jack and Emma exchanged a look, the weight of the last few hours etched on their faces. Together, they nodded as one. Promise, they said in unison. In that moment, the Wright household, though battered by betrayal and fear, found the first glimmer of hope and unity. But Emma knew, as did Jack and Linda, that their lives would remain forever changed by the choices and secrets of the past days. And Mia's laughter in the adjacent room reminded them they still had someone to protect, and that hope would drive them forward through whatever came next. The papers lay scattered across the Wrights' kitchen island like evidence in a crime scene. Emma stared at the glowing text from Megan, confirming their injunction. Court hearing scheduled for 3 p.m. tomorrow. Restraining order holds until then. For a moment, the overwhelming fear of losing everything eased. She reached over, closing Jack's browser window, momentarily thankful that the loan crisis had, at least for now, been paused. But the weight of the morning pressed on her chest. Her gaze fell on Jack, who sat behind the island with his laptop open. He quietly closed the screen when he noticed her staring. Emma's voice was calm but resolute. "Jack, we need to build trust again. I need to see your schedule, where you've been driving the past few days." Jack's gaze flickered to Linda, who sat in the corner with Luke. Neither spoke. Emma turned to Linda. "Mom, I'm sorry, but I have to do this. Please understand." Without waiting for permission, Emma pulled a small black device from her purse, a discreet GPS tracker roughly the size of a car key. She'd spent the afternoon researching options online, obsessively reading reviews for devices that could slip into a wallet or a bag. She had chosen this one because it claimed to have a long battery life and real-time tracking. She tapped a button on the tracker so that it blinked once, a sign it was powered on. Jack's eyes widened. "Emma, what are you doing?" Emma slid the tracker discreetly into Jack's worn leather wallet, which lay on the countertop. The leather was softened from years of use. It folded easily over the tracker. Then she snapped the wallet shut. "I need to know where you're going these days," she said softly. "I've watched too many empty gas stations at 11 p.m. on your routes. I need to understand what's happening tonight." Jack's expression twisted with tension, pity, guilt, frustration, and something else Anna couldn't quite identify. "I would have told you if I thought it was an issue," he said quietly. "I've been running extra showings out in North Dallas. Some clients insisted on late viewings." Emma crossed her arms. "Out in North Dallas? Or that rental building at Grapevine?" Jack flinched but remained silent. Emma rose and walked toward the front entryway. On the small wooden bench by the door lay his work bag, the same charcoal messenger bag he grabbed every morning. Without a word, she opened it, extracted his sleek black wallet, and slipped the GPS tracker near the zipper. The satchel closed with a soft click. Jack opened his mouth, then thought better of it. The tension between them was a taut wire. Instead, he pressed his thumb against his lips and nodded. Emma held his gaze long enough that Jack's downward glance felt like a confession. "Tomorrow," Emma said, "we look at Jack's digital trail, texts, calls, credit card receipts, everything. But tonight, I'll let the tracker speak for itself." She left the house, heart pounding. The late afternoon sun dipped into indigo shadows as she slipped into her car. She slid her phone off the passenger seat and tapped an app linked to the GPS tracker. A small red blinked on the map. She was about to follow it. Jack, unaware of the tracker, drove in his dark gray SUV out of the neighborhood around 6:45 p.m. He'd kissed Mia goodbye that morning, telling her he'd be home for bath time, then snuck out before anyone noticed. Emma watched from her rearview mirror as he rounded the corner and exited onto Main Street. Opening her phone's tracking app, Emma zoomed in on the red. That represented Jack. It showed a clear path northeast, toward Grapevine. Funny, Jack claimed he was heading to a client meeting at a commercial property in Carrollton, but that moved steadily along Highway 121 North instead. Emma's stomach knotted. She glanced at the clock, 6:50 p.m. She had 25 minutes before 7 p.m., the time Jack usually planned to be home, change, and get ready for dinner with the family. Tight schedule. She merged onto Central Expressway and followed Jack's route, eyes glued to the navigation screen. The GPS placed Jack's location at 7:05 p.m. in the parking lot of a modest 3-story brick and granite building facing Copple Road. It was a Vinewood Park Apartments complex, an aging rental property 20 minutes from their house. Emma continued straight past the main entrance, finding a spot on a side street. She shut her engine off and slid out, heart pounding in her ears. In the dim evening light, she watched the building's exterior. 3 flights of balconies. A few dead plants in badly cracked flower beds, a flickering hallway light on the second floor. She opened her phone's map view and saw Jack's red, moving toward a rear entrance at the building's quiet side. Emma's pulse raced. She slipped out of the car and walked around to a row of mailboxes near the side door. The building was mostly deserted. No kids playing, no residents hanging laundry. It felt like a shark's den. She leaned close enough to glimpse the lobby where Jack disappeared through a metal security door that chime-locked behind him. Moving quietly, Emma followed as best she could. The hallway lights were dull and flickered intermittently, casting tall shadows along the corridor. She angled her phone's screen next to her, half hidden against her hip, so that the red dot guided her. On the second floor, her heart surged as she saw Jack's, align with Unit 211, a door painted a muted forest green with a peeling number plate. Emma's breath caught. She pressed her back against the hallway wall about 15 feet from the door and watched. Through the narrow peephole, she saw only the dim outline of the hallway behind her. No one inside. She tapped the tracker app to double-check. Jack's sat squarely inside that unit. The next moment, a single flashlight beam flickered inside. Two silhouettes emerged, one tall and broad, the other shorter and unmistakably female. Emma caught the woman's long blonde hair as she placed a hand on Jack's arm. The scene froze her in place. Jack was leaning toward her, his head tilted, as if whispering something in her ear. The woman's free hand rose, brushing Jack's back. Instantly, both turned toward Emma's vantage point, as though sensing a presence. Emma's heart froze. She stumbled slightly, taking a quick step back, and her heel scraped against a loose strip of carpet. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps as the male silhouette, Jack's unmistakable posture, stepped toward the door. The door opened. Emma's phone slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. She crouched to pick it up, her fingers shaking so badly the GPS readout flickered. "Hello." The female voice was soft, amused. Then a low laughter. Emma barely registered who it was until the hallway light briefly caught the woman's face. Chloe Bennett, the stylist from earlier. Chloe's amber eyes widened, a slow smile curling on her lips. Jack's mouth twitched in the corner. Emma straightened, fury and heartbreak blazing. She held her phone up to record, though she doubted she would hear anything. Chloe gave Emma a sly nod and leaned in to whisper something to Jack, her hand brushing his arm like an intimate caress. Jack's expression was unreadable, frozen between embarrassment and defiance. Emma's knees nearly buckled. She stumbled backward, hitting the wall. The tracker's red flickered as Jack and Chloe turned away from the door and retreated deeper into the apartment. Emma scrambled back toward the stairs, her phone plugged into the app, silence replacing Chloe's laughter. Her eyes burned with tears as she retreated, her world shattering. Downstairs, Emma emerged through the side door, nearly colliding with a maintenance cart blocked by the overgrown shrubs flanking the entrance. She darted past it, her hands shaking as she pulled her phone to her ear. "Megan. Megan, it's Emma. You have to put a rush on tomorrow's hearing. Jack's cheating on me with Chloe." Her voice trembled. Megan's calm tone on the other end steadied her. "Breathe, Emma. You have evidence. We'll add infidelity to the motion, so the court knows your husband isn't protecting the marital assets in good faith. But first, get home safely. We'll sort out the details later." Emma hung up, her legs weak. She stared at the brick facade of the rental building, Unit 211 now hidden behind closed doors. A low hum of distant traffic and the crickets in the lawn outside filled the summer night's air. She thought of Mia waiting at home, oblivious, and felt her throat constrict with guilt. Clutching her phone, Emma retraced her path to her car, conscious of every step. She risked a glance back at the apartment complex one last time. Jack's red vanished, shifting instead toward the staircase icon. He must have gone up another level. Emma swallowed hard and slid into her car, her phone snug on the dashboard while the GPS camera recorded the evening's truth. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and red brake lights. Emma's knuckles whitened as she gripped the steering wheel. Her chest tightened. She imagined what the rest of the night would be like. Would she confront Jack the moment she stepped through the front door? Or would she hold those secrets tight, using them for evidence tomorrow? By the time she pulled into the Wright's driveway, 8:15 p.m., the sky was deep indigo. The house was quiet, save for a single light in the living room. Emma turned off the engine, took a shuddering breath, and hovered at the front door. She could hear giggles from inside, Mia's innocent laughter, likely with Linda. The sight and sound were both painful and comforting. They represented the home she still needed to protect. She opened the front door to the gentle clank of the latch and stepped inside. Linda and Lily sat on the sofa, coloring pages spread across the coffee table. Linda looked up, blinking away tears. She offered Emma a small, understanding smile. Emma shut the door quietly, turned on the small foyer light, and took off her jacket. She tried to steal her voice.
Mia.
Mia ran toward her, holding up a half-finished princess coloring sheet. Look, Mommy. I colored Cinderella's dress blue. Linda patted the couch. Come sit with Grandma, sweetie. Emma knelt to scoop Mia into her arms. She nuzzled her daughter's hair, torn between gathering evidence and calming her child. Emma realized her next steps would determine whether her marriage could be salvaged or if it would end in divorce. She could no longer pretend. Jack had betrayed her in ways that ran deeper than concealed debt. Today's stark proof of infidelity flashed on her mind like a neon sign, but the injunction would protect the house for now. She cradled Mia, whispering, "Did you have a fun night with Grandma?"
Mia giggled, "Yeah."
Emma swallowed, holding back her tears. She reached for the remote and turned on the soft glow of the television in the den. For Mia's sake, she would put on a brave face tonight. But come morning, she'd look Jack in the eyes, show him the tracker data, and demand the truth. Because Emma Wright didn't just need security from loan sharks, she needed the truth from her own husband and, ultimately, the courage to decide whether their marriage could weather this storm. Emma's car climbed slowly up the driveway, the engine ticking its cooling noise as she parked near the garage. The digital display on her phone read 8:22 p.m., barely 15 minutes since she had crept out of the Vinewood Park apartments behind Jack. Her heart still pounded as she opened the car door. The night air was cool, perfumed faintly by honeysuckle from the neighbor's yard. Her legs felt wobbly, as though she had run a marathon. She carried her phone in one hand, the GPS app still tracking Jack's every move, and held tightly to the seatbelt with the other, bracing herself for what she knew awaited inside. From the window of the Wright home, a soft glow lit the living room, a decorative table lamp, its shade casting golden ripples on the walls. Mia, their 3-year-old daughter, sat cross-legged on the rug, flipping through a board book and squealing with delight at a page featuring bright cartoon animals. Linda, Emma's mother-in-law, hovered nearby, knitting a scarf so garish in deep purples and neon pinks it would look more at home on the runway than in the Dallas suburbs. Hearing the car door click, Linda looked up, her knitting needle still. "Emma, you're home early." Emma forced a smile, an act of strength she wasn't sure she possessed. "Yes, I finished things up with Megan. Courts issued the injunction. We have until tomorrow afternoon to fix this." She set her phone on the bench by the front door, but did not look at Linda. Instead, she scanned the living room for Jack, half expecting him to burst through the door. But no sign of him. "Did you?" Linda began, but Emma cut her off. "I need to find Jack," she said softly. "He's not here. Have you seen him?" Linda held in a harsh breath. "He was here earlier. He was on the phone." Her gaze flicked to the GPS tracker display on Emma's phone. A faint red danced somewhere outside the home. "I thought he was handling work. You said he was going to close with the Reynolds family, right?" Emma's jaw tightened. "That was supposed to be at 7 p.m. It's past 8. Her voice wavered. "Where is he, Mom? Do you know where he might have gone?" Linda blinked in surprise, her knitting momentarily forgotten. "I thought he said he needed to stop by the office. He left my text unanswered, though." Emma turned and hurried past Linda, nearly tripping over the edge of the rug. She ran upstairs, fresh guilt tightening her chest. Aware that rushing away meant leaving things unsaid, but the need to confront Jack overrode everything else. At the top of the stairs, she paused. The baby monitor crackled to life with Mia's soft voice. "Mommy?" Emma inhaled and continued down the hallway, passing the guest room and her own study. The master bedroom door was closed. Emma could hear the muted hum of a ceiling fan. She hesitated, then pressed her ear against the door, hearing nothing but half-distant echoes of wind chimes from outside. Turning the handle gently, she felt the familiar heft of the wooden door. Behind it, all looked normal. Their king-sized bed with ivory and slate-gray bedding, nightstands saturated with children's books, and an assortment of untouched wine glasses. A potted succulent caught the last sliver of hallway light. But Jack was nowhere to be seen. A sudden buzzing from her pocket drew Emma to her phone again. The GPS tracker app showed Jack's location in real time. The red had moved from Unit 211 to a cluster of icons labeled Private Rental Suites. Emma's jaw clenched. It was 8:27 p.m., just 5 minutes since she'd arrived at their house. She pressed a finger to her lips in a silent command to remain quiet, then exited the master bedroom, tiptoeing down the stairs. In the foyer, she grabbed a small satchel from the coat rack, Jack's usual gym bag. She heaved a sigh, and then a resigned breath. She was doing it. She was about to go chase Jack to the same rental building where he'd snuck away. Every pulse of red on the GPS map felt like the final nail driving home her suspicions. Stepping out into the early spring night, Emma's senses heightened. She slipped into the passenger seat of her car, aware of how dark everything felt. The streetlights illuminated individual blades of grass, but beyond 50 feet it dissolved into black. She tapped the screen, zooming in on the red. It sat squarely in front of the Venetian Manor complex, a block away from Vinewood Park. It appeared Jack had moved. 8:31 p.m. Emma gunned the engine and turned onto Main Street, only half listening to the screech of tires on asphalt. She followed the GPS's route, fingers mashed to the steering wheel's leather rim. Her mind replayed the earlier glimpse she'd caught at Unit 211, Chloe Bennett, brushing Jack's arm with her fingertips, whispering in his ear. Was this why he'd skipped Mia's bath time yesterday? Why he'd returned home voicemail after voicemail when loan sharks had been breathing down their necks? A quick left turn brought her to the rear entrance of Venetian Manor. She parked a block away, under the dim glow of a street lamp. In the glow, the gabled roof and stucco walls looked innocuous, almost welcoming, completely at odds with the treachery she suspected brewed inside. Emma slid out of the car, her legs weak. She stuffed her phone into her pocket, clutched Jack's borrowed gym bag tightly, and moved toward the building. The side door pressed open easily against her light push. Likely someone had left it unlocked, or this entrance was less secure. Inside, the corridor was cool, painted a neutral beige that hid the silence. A single fluorescent tube overhead flickered, strobing illumination in irregular bursts. Emma paused to listen. Only the echo of distant plumbing and faint muffled voices down the hall. She moved slowly, her black flats muffling each footstep. The hallway's beige carpet muted sound. The faint hum of a wall-mounted AC unit provided a soft white noise under the crackle of her heartbeat. At each nearest apartment, she peeked through the small peepholes, eyes straining. Unit 309. Nothing but dark silhouettes behind closed curtains. Unit 308. Light on, but the silhouette inside was bulky, an elderly tenant with a cane, perhaps. Unit 307. Curtains drawn, no light. Finally, at Unit 210, her breath hitched. The narrow gold-colored number plate marked 210 against a slate-gray door. The faint glow of a lamp behind Venetian-patterned blinds shone, illuminating an L-shaped shadow against the window. Jack's profile. She pressed closer, careful not to make any noise. Through the blinds, she glimpsed Jack standing by the sofa. He was dressed in dark jeans, a crisp button-down shirt untucked at the hem. His hair was slightly mussed from driving. In his arms, he held a phone to his ear, his expression tense. On a coffee table in front of him, an open laptop glowed, an email window visible, though she couldn't make out the text. Behind him, a sleek leather armchair faced a small bar cart with a half-empty bottle of red wine and 2 glasses. The soft flicker of the television glowed from the corner, but was muted. Jack was mid-sentence. "Chloe, I can't keep doing both at once. My wife is... I'm trying to sort out everything with the injunction. I know it's complicated, but I care about us." Emma recoiled. Her knuckles whitened around the gym bag. She had to force herself to remain quiet. On the phone, a woman's voice, silken, confident. "Jack, please. We need clarity. If you want this relationship to continue, I need your undivided attention tonight. They've been bugging me about my next collection. You're my only support system." Jack's head dipped. "I know. But I promised Mia I'd be home for breakfast. I promised Emma." He trailed off, as though struggling with guilt. Emma's breath came hot and shallow. She inched a bit closer, though the narrow hallway offered scant cover. Shadows flickered on the wall, the dull yellow light morphing into streaks of darkness. Jack hung up the phone and pressed a finger to his forehead, as though trying to translate some internal calculus of remorse. Then, from the adjacent bedroom, behind a half-open door, Chloe Bennett emerged. She wore a silky black dress with spaghetti straps and heels that gave her a taller silhouette. Her blonde hair cascaded down her back in loose waves. She stood in a leisurely posture, hip cocked, arms folded. Her red lips parted in a faint smile when she saw Jack. "You look stressed," she said. Her voice low but hushed enough so their neighbors or building security cameras wouldn't pick it up. "But if you want to help me finalize tomorrow's runway fitting, I need you here." Jack closed his eyes and rubbed at his temples. "Chloe, I'm in a tough spot. My wife, Emma, she's on edge. And I can't focus on both you and her right now. Not with the loan sharks breathing down our necks. I need to be home with the kids if we can. Please understand." Chloe's expression shifted, a barely detectable hardening of her eyebrows. She crossed the room, each step measured, and placed a hand on his chest. "Jack, do you realize what I'm giving up? My sponsor in LA is on the fence. They want models lined up by noon tomorrow. You promised me you'd be there." Jack's jaw tightened. He looked into Chloe's eyes for a moment, eyes lined with determination and a hint of regret for both of them, and then he turned away, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I can't. Not tonight." He took a step back, and Chloe's hand dropped as though burned. Emma's heart hammered in her chest. She watched Chloe's silky dress swish as she turned on her heel. With one shallow nod, Chloe departed through an interior doorway, sliding away like an apparition. Jack turned, closing the bedroom door. He leaned against it, closing his eyes as though pulling himself together. Emma felt a fierce surge of pain and anger. She had everything she needed for evidence of infidelity. But she also felt raw, vulnerable, and for a fleeting moment, remembered their wedding vows. In a swift decision, Emma lifted her head, squared her shoulders, and approached the door. Every step felt like the clink of a hammer striking an anvil. Her phone slipped from her pocket, but she caught it just before it touched the carpet. She tapped the record button on the camera app. Jack's back was still turned. He pressed his forehead into his hand, shoulders now visibly trembling. Emma's stomach coiled. With lightning speed, she raised her head and rapped sharply on the door. Jack jumped, startled, as though the last 5 minutes had been a daydream. He turned, his eyes wide and pleading. "Emma?" Emma took a step back. Phone raised, tears glistening in her eyes. "I saw everything, Jack." Her voice was cold, measured, like ice fracturing at a pond surface. "I saw you whispering to Chloe. I watched you brush her arm. I heard you tell her you'd be there for her." Jack shook his head, stretching out his hands in a gesture of helplessness. "Emma, I swear I can explain." "Explain?" Emma's voice cracked on the word, but she forced composure. "How do you explain keeping the secret? How do you explain leading a double life? I've spent every sleepless night worrying about loan sharks. I've kept this family afloat. Meanwhile, you're sneaking around with Chloe in some cheap bar of all places?" She forced herself to continue, to let the words tumble out in a torrent. You lied to me, Jack. You lied to our daughter. And you lied to your mother. Jack's face paled, and he stared as if the last shred of hope had been extinguished. Emma, I didn't lie to you about finances on purpose. I thought I could fix it. And as for Chloe, I never meant to hurt you. She's going through a tough time and…
Don't
say it. Emma cut him off sharply. I don't want your excuses.
I don't want your regrets.
I want to know why you chose to stand in someone else's arms instead of coming home to me. Jack's throat bobbed. He swallowed, then said, because I felt lost. With the loan sharks, I thought everything about my life was crumbling. Chloe, she reminded me of who I used to be, before all the pressure. Emma's nostrils flared with disbelief. You think that's a good enough reason to betray me? Betray our marriage? To show our 3-year-old that Daddy has someone else? Jack closed his eyes, grief plain on his face. When he opened them again, they were red-rimmed. I'm sorry, he whispered. I love you. I love Mia. Please believe that. This was never supposed to happen. Emma's voice was brittle. If you love me, why did you lie? Why did you risk our family for a fantasy you couldn't even commit to? Jack looked away, unable to meet her gaze. I know. I owe you everything, Emma. Emma exhaled, tears spilling down her cheeks. This was the final blow. She turned on her heel and headed down the hallway toward the entrance, her steps determined despite the quaver in her legs. Jack called her name, but she didn't turn. Emma, wait. Please don't go. His voice cracked in desperation. In the foyer, she picked up her coat and the gym bag, flinging one strap over her shoulder. Jack followed, trailing behind as she touched the front door. Linda crouched beside Mia on the couch, unwilling or unable to witness Jack's apology. Luke stood frozen by the stairs, guilt etched into his face. The entire family's fracture lay bare in the living room. Jack moved closer. Please, just talk to me. Let me explain more. Emma cut him off, her voice unwavering as steel.
No, Jack.
I heard enough. I came here for one last chance at saving this marriage. But you chose someone else. And you chose to lie about our finances. The house. Our daughter, me. Everything you said you cared about. You broke me, Jack. Jack's mouth fell open. He swallowed and then covered his face with his hands, his shoulders convulsing with silent sobs. Emma turned to Linda, tears flowing unchecked.
Mom, I'm sorry.
Her voice trembled, sincere. I have to do what's right for Mia. Linda let out a strangled cry, standing to place a tentative hand on Emma's shoulder. I understand, honey. She looked at Jack, hollow-eyed. Son, this is what you've done. Jack dropped to his knees, head bowed. Mom. Emma, I'm sorry. I never wanted this. Please don't do this. But the moment had already arrived. Emma knelt next to her sobbing husband and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Jack. I wish we could be okay again, but it's too late.
Good night.
She turned toward the front door, pausing as her hand closed around the handle. She looked back at Jack one last time, pain and finality shining in her eyes. Then she stepped outside. The door clicked shut behind her. On the front porch, Emma stood in the faint glow of the overhead light, the keyhole casting a ring of light on the welcome mat. Mia, now nestled in Linda's arms, peered out with wide, confused eyes. Mommy? She crooned softly. Emma knelt to meet her daughter's gaze. Her voice caught, thick with sorrow. Mia, she said, stroking her daughter's soft curls. Mommy loves you. But Daddy can't take care of us the way we deserve.
Tonight, you stay with Grandma.
I'm going to Aunt Megan's apartment. I'll make sure everything's okay. I promise. She pressed a gentle kiss to Mia's forehead. Mia whimpered, looking between Emma and Jack, who knelt on the living room floor, distraught. Linda's voice trembling. Emma, do whatever you need to do. We'll make sure she's safe.
Emma stood, nodding.
Thank you, Mom. She took a deep breath, turned to her waiting car, and paused. The echoes of her own earlier words, words of betrayal and heartbreak, rippled through her mind. In her heart, An ember of relief glowed. She had chosen truth over deceit, integrity over comfort. But she also felt the ache of loss and the daunting path ahead: single parenthood, rebuilding financial security, and healing her soul from the wounds inflicted by the man she once believed would love her forever. She took one final look at the home she had fought so hard to protect, then closed the distance to her car. As she slid into the passenger seat, pulling the door closed gently behind her, her knuckles whitened around the gym bag, Jack's, his belongings, and perhaps a symbolic gesture of closing the chapter on their marriage. She raised her phone, texting Megan, "I'm heading over. Tomorrow, let's finalize the divorce paperwork." Emma exhaled in the quiet of the night, rain softening on the pavement. She started the engine, the low hum echoing her resolve. As her car rolled away, her silhouette receded from the front porch like a ghost shaking off her past. Inside the right home, Jack's sobs echoed quietly, mingling with the hum of the television and the soft cooing of a 3-year-old. The home had become a tomb for shattered promises and broken trust. And as Emma drove away, she felt the first heavy drop of grief. A tear slipped from her eye and traced a line down her cheek. But with that tear came a flicker of freedom. She was free from the lies, the deceit, and the betrayal. Now, her path lay open toward rebuilding a life guided by honesty and love for her daughter. Tomorrow, the divorce papers. Tonight, only the fierce pain of letting go. On a crisp spring morning in Seattle, the Puget Sound gleamed like liquid glass, reflecting the soft glow of the rising sun. Sailboats drifted lazily by, their white sails contrasting sharply against the cobalt waters. At the edge of a quiet residential street in Ballard, 3 generations of the Parker family occupied a cozy craftsman-style home, painted a soothing shade of sage green. In the open-concept kitchen, Zoe Parker, a 24-year-old graphic designer at a thriving media agency, leaned on the countertop, sipping a frothy latte. Her chestnut brown hair was pulled into a loose bun, and a single tendril framed her delicate features. Zoe wore a comfortable yet chic outfit, jeans and a soft cashmere sweater, perfectly blending professional with relaxed Northwest style. She scanned her phone's calendar, mentally reviewing the day's tasks: finalize a logo for a local startup, attend a midday brainstorming session, and meet an old college mentor later that afternoon. Across the room, Maggie Parker, Zoe's 50-year-old mother-in-law, bustled about. Maggie, once a high school English teacher, had traded chalk dust for coffee beans a decade earlier, purchasing and running a charming waterfront cafe called Sound and Grounds. Her silver-streaked dark hair was tied into a neat ponytail, and she wore a colorful linen apron over a navy blouse. Maggie chopped vegetables for quiche, savory delights she planned to serve at the cafe's brunch service that day. Often, customers trickled in as early as 7 a.m., just to sip her signature lavender-infused latte. Seated at the small bistro table near the window was Mia, Maggie's tabby cat, curled up in a sunbeam. Mia licked her paws methodically, her green eyes half-closed. The cat occasionally twitched an ear whenever the doorbell fashioned a soft jingle, signaling the arrival of guests thirsty for Maggie's handcrafted brews. Despite the quiet domesticity, an undercurrent of tension floated in the room, an invisible thread tying Zoe's slender shoulders in a knot. Mid-morning, a set of footsteps crunched on the flagstone walkway outside. The front door swung open, and Caleb Parker, Zoe's husband, strode in. At 27, Caleb worked as a civil engineer for a local development firm, designing sustainability-minded apartment complexes throughout King County. His short-cropped dark hair and stubble framed a strong jawline. He wore khaki pants and a button-down plaid shirt, giving off the casual confidence of someone who knew exactly where each bolt and beam would fit in a new building. Caleb's blue eyes, always lingering on the horizon as though mentally sketching building silhouettes, softened when he caught sight of Zoe's retreating figure. He set down his black messenger bag, its straps embossed with the logo of his firm, Cascade Builders. "Hey, hon," he called, swaying between relief and fatigue. He extended a hand, gently brushing a wisp of hair from Zoe's face. Zoe offered a tentative smile, but her lips quivered ever so slightly. "Good morning," she replied, her voice soft. "Morning, Mom." She touched Maggie's shoulder, nodding toward the cafe apron. "You busy today?" Maggie turned, draping a damp kitchen towel over her shoulder. "Always busy. Brunch crowd starts rolling in by 9. How was your meeting last night with the Reynolds agency?" Zoe shifted uncomfortably. "It went well. Lots of exciting projects lined up for the spring campaign." She glanced at Caleb, then exhaled. "Maggie, can I talk to you privately in the living room?" Maggie's eyes flicked between Zoe and Caleb, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Of course, dear." She led Zoe into the living room, the early light streaming through windows overlooking the sound. Caleb cleared his throat, offering coffee to Zoe. She shook her head. "Not right now, thanks." He watched them both with mild confusion before slipping back into the kitchen to check on his mother. Inside the living room, Zoe sank onto the cream-colored sectional sofa. The coffee-gray sludge of the Puget Sound glittered through the wide windows behind her. She crossed her legs, clasped her hands tightly, and met Maggie's gaze. "Maggie," she began, voice trembling. "So, a friend from college reached out. I think she's back in town." Before Zoe could finish, a light knock sounded at the front door. Maggie's eyebrows shot upward. That must be, oh dear. She rose and marched to the door. Standing on the porch, framed by oil-rubbed bronze house numbers and a hanging planter of lavender, was Maddy Rivers, a 25-year-old woman with platinum blonde hair cascading over designer sunglasses. She wore a tailored striped blazer over a silk blend blouse and designer jeans, an effortlessly polished look. A tasteful leather tote hung from her shoulder. "Hi, Mrs. Parker," Maddy said, her voice warm and slightly breathy. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Her laughter, light, playful, confident, bounced down the hallway like a rolling pebble. Maggie's face softened into a genuine smile. "Not at all, dear."
Come in.
She opened the door wider. "You must be Maddy, Caleb's college friend. Zoe's been telling me about you." Maddy linked her arm through Maggie's, breezing past her into the living room. Her heels clicked on the hardwood floors as she approached Zoe, who remained seated on the sofa. Maddy extended a perfectly manicured hand. "Hello, Zoe. It's so wonderful to meet you at last." Zoe accepted the handshake politely, noting Maddy's cool aura, the kind that said, "I'm accomplished, and you should be grateful to know me." Zoe's hazel eyes flicked from Maddy's designer tote to the artifice of her perfectly sculpted waves. "Maddy." Zoe forced a smile, attempting genuine warmth. "Thank you for coming by." Maddy pulled off her sunglasses, revealing impeccably lined eyes, hints of understated but costly shadow. "I've missed Seattle," she admitted, sliding onto the love seat across from Zoe. "Chicago was great for a while, but there's no place like home." Allowing her jacket to slip off her shoulders, she threw it over the armrest. "I used to visit the Sound and grounds all the time. Your lattes are legendary." Maggie hovered nearby, beaming proudly. "I still remember when your mother gifted me this cafe. It feels like yesterday." Maddy leaned forward, her tones suddenly earnest. "Maggie, I wanted to see you, just you, because I cherish our connection. And I thought, maybe if I came by, we could catch up. I heard you're considering expanding the menu. Maybe I could help with a promotional photo shoot for your social media?" Maggie's eyes sparked with delight. "Oh, that would be wonderful. I've been thinking about sprucing things up." From the corner of her eye, Zoe watched Maddy and Maggie shake hands, her chest tightening with a faint tug of tension. She appreciated that Maddy had arrived at her mother-in-law's invitation. But there was something in the way Maddie's perfectly arched eyebrows hovered over Maggie's face, as though planting seeds of doubt. Meanwhile, Caleb emerged from the kitchen with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. He spotted Maddy in the living room, and a hint of surprise crossed his face. "Maddy, you're back in Seattle already?" Maddy smiled at Caleb with easy confidence. "I moved back last week. You never told me your mom had a cafe." She kissed Maggie's cheek. This place is fabulous, just like I remember. Caleb slid onto the couch next to Zoe, resting a hand on her knee. Zoe told me she ran into you at the airport. Maddy nodded, tucking a blonde lock behind her ear. Yes. It was a happy coincidence. I've missed you both so much. Zoe, we should grab lunch, catch up on everything. Zoe managed a polite nod.
Sure.
Maybe after your meeting, assuming you're free. She forced a smile that she hoped concealed the prickling unease in her chest. Maddy's eyes landed on Zoe's hand, which curled around the coffee cup. I'd love that, she said sweetly. By the way, I'm working with a few fashion clients. Maybe I can style your next shoot, Zoe. I'd love to help you out. Like old times, right? Zoe's cheeks warmed. She had started doing freelance photo styling on the side, and her agency had always been impressed. Thanks, Maddy. I'd love to pick your brain. But as Maddy chatted on about her successes in Chicago, international clients, runway shows, big-time sponsorships, Zoe sensed an undercurrent. Every compliment Maddy gave Zoe was laced with just enough envy to prick the moment. And every time Maddy rested a hand on Caleb's shoulder, Zoe felt a jolt of suspicion, as though Maddy was subtly reclaiming territory. Later that morning, after Maggie filled Maddy's order book with quiche samples to test, Caleb escorted Maddy to the door. So, lunch at Dozo? He asked, referring to their favorite sushi spot in the Fremont district. Perfect, Maddy said, standing just a fraction too close to Caleb. She brushed his arm as she grabbed her purse. I'll text you the details. Caleb's eyes flashed with something Zoe couldn't quite place, an awkward warmth that made her stomach flutter unpleasantly. Be safe, he said as Maddy stepped onto the porch. Zoe watched the front door close, leaving the two men alone. Caleb walked back into the living room, frowning slightly before looking at Zoe. She's doing great. I'm glad she's back. Zoe nodded, though her heart rumbled with questions. She turned back to Maggie, who was wiping her hands on her apron.
Mom.
Thanks again for inviting Maddy. I should get back to my designs. Big pitch this afternoon. Maggie squeezed Zoe's shoulder. You deserve to shine, dear. We'll catch up later. As Zoe headed down the stairs to her home office, she glanced out the window at Elliott Bay. Her life felt paradoxically both peaceful and stormy, Seattle's glassy waters masking the undercurrents that were already stirring. Little did Zoe know, the reunion with Maddy Rivers would set off a chain reaction that tested every ounce of trust in her marriage and family bonds. A week had passed since Maddy Rivers' surprise appearance at the Parker household. Maggie Parker's cafe, Sound and Grounds, bustled with its usual mid-morning crowd. Washington State University students hunched over laptops, retirees sipping Earl Grey by the window, and local writers scribbling in leather-bound notebooks. The cafe's signature scent, a heady mix of freshly ground espresso and lavender syrup, permeated every corner. Maggie wiped her hands on her apron as she balanced a tray of lemon blueberry muffins. She spotted the bell above the door jingle and looked up, expecting a regular. Instead, there was Maddy, her platinum hair perfectly styled, wearing a light trench coat and carrying a designer tote. Maddy's bright, confident smile lit up the room, drawing the attention of nearly every customer within earshot. Mrs. Parker, Maddy greeted in a friendly soprano, stepping past the counter as if she owned the place. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by to see how you're doing and to sample some of that famous lavender latte. Maggie's heart fluttered with pride. Maddy, you're here early. Yes, please come grab a seat. I'll bring you a latte and a plate of our newest muffins. She turned to reach for a coffee cup, but Maddy gently slid in front of her. No, allow me, Maddy insisted, tying her scarf in a neat knot. I want to get a feel for the morning rush. Would you show me how you make that latte? It's been ages since I've sipped the real thing. Maggie hesitated a moment. Her cafe was busy, the barista line out the door, but Maddy's enthusiasm was infectious. Okay, but you can't distract me too much, or we'll get backed up. She nodded at the young barista behind the espresso machine, who tossed her a grateful smile. Zoe Parker hovered nearby with a tablet in hand, prepping for a midday design meeting that would be held in Maggie's back office, a small nook partitioned by floor-to-ceiling shelves of beans and mugs. As Zoe organized her latest mock-ups, Maddy's reappearance gave her an unnerving jolt. Just because Maddy and Caleb were college friends didn't mean Zoe liked the idea of seeing her all the time. Maddy watched Maggie grind fresh lavender beans, an experimental seasonal blend, and carefully steam milk to add that distinct floral hint. She leaned in, nodding approvingly. "You still have the Midas touch," Maddy said. "I heard this blend won third place at the Seattle Roasters Festival." She flashed a proud grin. "Brag-worthy, right?" Maggie beamed. "It was such an honor. We had to tweak the lavender ratio 5 times to get it perfect." She poured the velvety milk over the espresso shot, then swirled in a lavender syrup drizzle. Maddy clapped softly, her manicured nails tapping the edge of the cup. Zoe, standing just inside the doorway to the back office, bit her lip. She could hear every word. She recognized that hungry look on Maddy's face, the kind of look reserved for discovering something valuable that no one else appreciated as much. Zoe forced herself to remember that Maddy had taken a job in Chicago to pursue bigger dreams, and only now that Zoe and Caleb were comfortably settled, Maddy had drifted back home. "Here you go," Maggie said, placing the latte in front of Maddy on a ceramic saucer. The glass glowed like a work of art. "Try it." Maddy swirled the foam, inhaled deeply, and then sipped. Her eyes closed, savoring every millisecond. Perfection. "You never disappoint." As Maddy clinked her spoon against the saucer, giving a little hum of genuine satisfaction, Maggie's chest warmed. "Thank you." Maddy set the cup down and looked around the cafe, her gaze lingering on Zoe, who had discreetly positioned herself at a small table by the window, nose buried in her tablet. "That's Zoe, right? Your daughter-in-law? She's lovely." Maggie nodded and glanced at Zoe, who had just looked up and offered a polite wave. Zoe's slender frame and sensitive eyes were a stark contrast to Maddy's poised confidence. Maggie watched the two women, sensing a subtle tension that flickered between them. Maddy took a slow sip of her latte, leaning back. "How's she doing these days? With the baby thing." Her tone was casual, but the implication was clear. Zoe's heart twisted at the mention of the baby thing. For 6 months, she and Caleb had been trying to conceive with no success. Although every medical checkup had come back normal, the pressure to produce an heir in a close-knit Seattle family that valued legacy weighed heavily on her. Yet she'd never felt comfortable talking about it, not even with her in-laws. Maggie shifted uneasily.
She's great.
Busy with work as always. She cleared her throat, eyeing Maddy. "And, well, we'll see." Maddy gave a sadly sympathetic smile. "I get it. Women move at their own pace. But, I was just thinking, if she's swamped, maybe she needs to take a break, focus on health, maybe see a specialist. I've read a lot about the fertility scene in Seattle. Lots of resources, high-end clinics." She took another delicate sip, savoring the moment. "I'd be happy to connect her with Dr. Caldwell, if she's open to it. He's the top OB/GYN in Ballard." Maggie looked at Zoe, whose face paled. An awkward silence settled between the two women. Zoe forced a tight smile. "Thanks, Maddy. I appreciate the suggestion." She glanced at her tablet, as if it held vital priorities. Maddy's expression softened, but there was a flicker of triumph in her eyes. "Anytime. I just hate seeing someone miss out on the joys of motherhood." She sipped again. Maggie's eyes darted between Zoe and Maddy, her own first thoughts whispering, maybe Zoe should talk to someone. But before she could speak, Maddy shifted topics, as if tossing a pebble onto still water. Maddy said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "when I was living in Chicago, I met so many women who barely cooked at home. They relied on meal kits, drop-offs, you name it. Sometimes I worry about Zoe. She seems so busy with work. Like, she barely has time to make it to a Friday night dinner? Maybe she's too motivated to have much downtime." Zoe's chest tightened. She set her tablet aside. "If you're talking about cooking dinner tonight, I actually have plans with Caleb. We're meeting friends for trivia night at the Pink Door." Maddy offered a thin smile. Sounds fun, if she can get away. She took an exaggerated sip of her latte, as though showing off how effortlessly she could multitask. Zoe managed to keep her jaw from clenching. She exhaled and rose. Got to run. Big campaign presentation in 20 minutes. Maddy watched Zoe's retreat with interest. Good luck, dear. She turned back to Maggie once Zoe disappeared. You know, if she wanted to just chill, you guys could have Sunday brunch here. A big, home-cooked spread might do wonders. It'd be nice to see your family together. Maggie nodded, unsure how to take Maddy's suggestion. I'll talk to her. Thanks for the idea. But inside, Maggie's mind whirled. Maybe Zoe is missing out on family time. Maybe she's too career-focused. Maddy had dropped that seed, and Maggie felt it sprout uneasily in her chest. She turned back to bake a fresh batch of scones, but her thoughts remained tangled. Later that afternoon, Zoe closed her laptop in Maggie's back office, finalizing the logo mock-ups. A quick tap on her phone reminded her of dinner plans with Caleb, trivia night at 7:30. She closed her notebook and stepped back into the cafe's main room, where the mid-morning crowd had thinned. A fresh line of customers shuffled in for their midday caffeine fix. Maggie lounged behind the counter as she inspected a delivery of organic beans, a flavor Zoe had recommended yesterday. Zoe slipped behind the counter to help mug the beans for the next round. Hey, Mom, Zoe said softly, setting a labeled bag down. Sorry about earlier. I appreciated you stepping in for me. Maggie set her beans aside, giving Zoe a tight smile. No problem, sweetheart. I was just thinking, you ever consider letting Caleb know you appreciate him more? He seems preoccupied these days. Zoe paused, tugging at her hairband. He's been busy at work, big project deadlines.
I'm fine.
Just checking, Maggie said, returning to the bean grinder. Yet her tone carried the same undercurrent. He's busy. And you don't show enough appreciation. Zoe forced a smile and focused on tamping the ground beans into the portafilter. I'll make sure to thank him at dinner. As the espresso machine hissed, Zoe noticed Maddy through the corner of her eye. Maddy stood at the order pickup window, speaking softly into her phone, her gaze drifting toward Zoe. When Zoe caught her eye, Maddy offered a small wave before returning to her call. Too many tiny jabs, Zoe thought, noting how Maddy's eyes scrutinized her every move, like a curator judging a painting. The clock on the wall ticked toward 4 p.m. Before Zoe grabbed her purse and slipped out the back door, Maddy slid behind the counter. Zoe, wait a second, she said, her voice unnervingly sweet. Are you going to see Dr. Caldwell tomorrow? The one I mentioned? If not, I know his nurse, Sarah. She offered to fit you into the schedule for early screening. Zoe's stomach twisted. I'll think about it, Maddy. Right now, I'm in the middle of this presentation. That's fine. Maddy's glossy eyes locked onto Zoe's. Just remember, sometimes we get so busy chasing dreams. We forget the important things. Zoe set her jaw and nodded curtly. Thanks, she muttered, then slipped out the back door. As Zoe walked to her car, dodging a few pedestrians applying sponges of sunscreen, she felt the weight of Maddy's dollar-worded barbs pressing against her chest. Busy chasing dreams, forget the important things. She had never felt more torn. Her career meant everything, but the love of her life, Caleb, needed her too. And now her mother-in-law worried that she wasn't turning enough attention toward family and children. Inside Maggie's cafe, Maddy watched Zoe's retreating figure with a small, knowing smile. She took another sip of her espresso, cherishing the moment she had, planting plants of doubt to blossom later. That evening, Zoe arrived back home just as the orange-pink twilight settled over the Puget Sound. Dusty rose clouds floated above the Olympic Mountains, lending Seattle its trademark serenity. Through the picture window, Zoe saw Caleb standing on the porch, staring at his phone. He looked up as she walked toward him, releasing a small, affectionate smile. Hey you, he said, stepping closer. His usual easygoing demeanor was tinged with something else, an anxious energy Zoe had not seen before. Hey, she replied, leaning in and kissing his cheek. Ready for trivia? Caleb nodded, but his smile faltered.
Yeah.
I got a text from Maddy earlier.
He sighed.
She recommended you see her doctor friend about, well, you know. His voice softened. I wish you'd consider it. Zoe's chest tightened again. I'll think about it. Let's just enjoy tonight. She reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. I love you. Caleb's grip tightened on hers as they walked toward the car, a midnight blue Subaru Outback. He offered Zoe a small smile, one fraught with both love and uncertainty. As they drove down the winding streets toward the pink door, Zoe exhaled, hoping the trivia night would offer a temporary reprieve from Maddy's whispered doubts and Maggie's anxieties. Little did they know, Maddy's seeds of suspicion were already taking root, and tomorrow's bright sun would find cracks forming around the Parker family's facade of harmony. The trivia night at the Pink Door had been a welcome distraction, Seattle's bustling Pioneer Square district alive with chatter, laughter, and the clink of glasses. Zoe and Caleb had high-fived as their team, Puget Sound pundits, scraped together a respectable third-place finish in a round dedicated to Pacific Northwest geography. For 90 minutes, they'd banished the stress of late work deadlines and the quiet anguish of unspoken pressures. But once they'd stepped out into the brisk night air and climbed back into their Navy Subaru Outback, the tension that had lingered between them all day returned, magnified by the flickering streetlights that cast shifting shadows on the pavement. Caleb navigated the winding streets of Ballard, steering the car with a stiffness that belied his normally easygoing nature. He glanced at Zoe, seated in the passenger seat, spinning the ring on her left hand, her wedding band, until her knuckles turned white. She avoided his gaze, eyes fixed on the dark horizon beyond the windshield. Zoe, he began, his voice measured. About earlier. She braced herself as the car turned onto their quiet, tree-lined street. In the pale glow of their porch light, the small craftsman house seemed to loom like a fixture from a gentler era of their lives. They bought it only 2 years earlier, sight unseen, trusting it to be the perfect nest for a growing family. What about earlier? Zoe asked, exhaling slowly. Caleb parked the car in the driveway, switched off the engine, and turned to face her. His blue eyes held a weary intensity. Maddy's been here 3 times now, promoting that fertility doctor, hinting about our baby timeline, and suggesting you're too focused on work. You didn't say anything when she mentioned it to Maggie in the cafe. You just walked off. Zoe's chest tightened. You know why I walked off, Caleb? I didn't want to argue in front of her. And besides, she hesitated, choosing her words carefully. This isn't Maddy's suggestion. It's our decision as a couple. You know that. Caleb's lips pressed into a thin line. But it's happening.
Zoe.
It's like she's trying to pry us apart. And I don't know if you realize how uncomfortable it makes me feel when I see you two whispering behind the counter. Zoe shifted uncomfortably. Whispering. We weren't whispering. We were talking about the new latte blend. Caleb sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. All right. But you have to admit, it looks like she's planting doubts about family, about priorities. You spend hours at the cafe, then late nights in your home office. And when I get home, you're exhausted. I feel like we're drifting. Zoe steepled her fingers, voice gentle but firm. Caleb, I get it. I do. But you have to trust me when I say I'm trying to strike a balance. It's not easy. Every time I sit down to revise a branding pitch, I feel guilty for not being on my laptop, grinding away. And the moment I look up, I feel guilty for not being home enough. I can't win. Right? Caleb snapped, though his tone softened almost immediately. You're good at your job, you love it. But if you're so worried about guilt, maybe ask yourself why you took on all these extra responsibilities. Why not drive 5 minutes across the sound to a smaller agency? Or slow your freelance work down. Zoe frowned. Slowport? They offered me a salary position last summer. But I turned it down because I believed in the company I work for now, and I love the creative freedom. This career isn't just a paycheck for me. It's part of who I am. Caleb's jaw clenched.
So do I.
I want to design buildings that last generations, yes. But right now, I feel like the only thing I'm designing is a lonely existence. The silence that followed held an aching weight. In the stillness, the click of a loose porch light bulb outside sounded deafening. Both of them stared ahead at the dashboard's dim glow, processing the gravity of his words. Finally, Zoe spoke, her voice soft. I don't want you to feel lonely. I promise I'll carve out more time. Starting tomorrow, I'll spend an hour at home before dinner. No screens, just us. And on Saturday, I'll put the laptop away all day. We'll go for a hike like we used to. Caleb's shoulders eased slightly, though a shadow of doubt lingered behind his eyes. I appreciate that. He reached across the center console and took her hand. I want us to be in this together. Balancing work, building family, actually enjoying each other's company. Zoe squeezed his hand. I want that too. Do you think I don't miss our weekend hikes? I miss them more than you know. Caleb's voice softened.
So do I.
But Zoe, we need to talk about Maddy. I know she's your friend, but I feel like her visits have an agenda, especially when she says things about our fertility. I get that she's trying to help, but it feels invasive.
Zoe sighed.
Her gaze drifting to the windshield, where the streetlights lent dancing flecks of light across the glass. Maddy's putting her foot in it, I know. But you have to understand, she's had a successful modeling career, and everyone in our circle seemed to look at her as a role model. She's always been confident, you know? Maybe too confident. I get why it seems like she's making suggestions. But I'm not going to let her make decisions for us. Caleb exhaled, his grip on her hand tightening before he released it. I know you won't. Every time she talks about fertility treatments, I get flashbacks to how your parents did IVF when you were a kid. I know you're okay with it, and I respect that. But remember, I still want kids the natural way, and sometimes I worry you feel pressured. Zoe's lips quivered as memories of childhood flickered through her mind, the sight of her mother's swollen belly. Blood draws, late-night study sessions in college while her parents were in the fertility clinic. I know. Those memories, they haunt me sometimes, too. But I've come to terms with it. If it takes interventions, that's okay. Caleb tilted his head, searching her face. Okay. I just want to make sure we're on the same page and that you don't feel like I'm not supportive. Because I am. I just hate feeling like I'm competing with Maddy over your attention. Zoe reached across and held his cheek. You're not competing. You're my husband, and I love you. I won't let Maddy upset our marriage. She paused, looking into his blue eyes. But I also can't give up my career. I need you to trust me, Caleb. Can you trust me? Caleb swallowed hard, his gaze softening. Yes, I trust you. I just need reassurance, sometimes, that we're in this together. That our priorities align. Zoe brushed his chin with her thumb. We do.
So,
let's hear each other out more, no assumptions. She gave a small, encouraging smile. And maybe we switch from Seattle trivia to something less competitive soon? He offered a small laugh, the tension easing.
Deal.
How about park trivia next week? She nodded, relief flooding her chest. I'd like that. For a moment, they sat in the quiet of the car, leaning on each other, re-establishing the bond that had felt so tenuous. But just as they moved to open the doors and step inside their cozy home, Caleb spotted a dark sedan pull up across the street. From the passenger seat, Maddy emerged, phone in hand. Even though Zoe and Caleb had not texted to expect her, she stood on the sidewalk, arms folded, her leather tote slung over one shoulder like a sentinel. Zoe's heartbeat slid back into her throat. Caleb, she whispered, rising into a defensive posture even though they had just promised to prioritize each other. She's here again. Caleb's face darkened. He placed a protective arm around Zoe. I'll handle it. He strode out to the front walkway as Zoe moved to lock the car door. Maddy approached with her trademark confident smile, unwavering, like a chess master who already knew the next 5 moves. Zoe. Caleb, she greeted warmly. Hope I'm not intruding. She glanced at Caleb, her tone neutral, professional. I just wanted to drop off some material on that fertility doctor, pamphlets, contact info. You know, I'm finishing up my shoot at 8th and Pine, and thought I'd fill this gap. Caleb's jaw tensed. Thanks, Maddy. But Zoe's done for the night. He placed a friendly yet firm hand on her elbow. "We really need some family time." Maddy tilted her head, a flicker of disappointment in her eyes. "Oh, of course." She tapped her phone, pulling up an email. "Well, here's Dr. Caldwell's direct line. I didn't want you to feel rushed. And Maggie says you might need a medication protocol if you plan ahead." Zoe stepped forward, forcing a polite smile. "Maddy, appreciate it, but I'm not ready. I'll reach out when we're ready." Her fingers twitched at the handle of the front door. She felt trapped between gratitude and suffocation. Maddy nodded slowly. "I understand." She paused, glancing first at Zoe, then at Caleb. "Just know my support is unconditional." Her tone bore a hint of something else, an implication that her support came with expectations. Caleb cleared his throat, voice taking on a diplomatically cool edge. "Thanks for caring. We'll be in touch if we need anything." Maddy offered a stiff nod, readied her tote, and turned on her heel. "Good night." As she stepped back toward the dark sedan, Caleb closed the front door with a decisive click. He locked it, then turned to Zoe, placing both hands on her shoulders. "I'm sorry she's still pushing." Zoe exhaled, letting the adrenaline drain from her limbs. "It's okay. I just wish I could have a quiet evening without her hovering over us." She bit her lip, glancing down at her still spinning ring. "I love my career. I love you. But I can't handle these constant reminders that I'm supposed to be somewhere else." Caleb wrapped his arms around her. "I know. And I love you for chasing your dreams. Let's not let Maddy's agenda throw us off. Tonight, let's cook dinner together. No distractions." Zoe turned in his embrace, placing her arms around his waist. "I'd like that," she murmured. They moved inside, the front door clicking shut behind them. Lights flickered on in the living room, illuminating framed family photos, their wedding day at Lake Union. A candid shot of Maggie and Caleb hugging at Zoe's graduation, and a picture of Mia chasing ducks at Green Lake. The walls felt suddenly suffocating with expectations, from parents, from friends, and from each other. Zoe exhaled, leaning against Caleb's chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heart beneath her ear. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "I'll make time for brunch at your mom's. And Saturday, we'll hike Discovery Park. Just us." Caleb pressed a kiss to her temple. "Promise." Zoe lifted her head, searching his eyes. "We're a team, right? No more silent drifting." His nod was solemn. A team. But shadows still lingered. As they turned toward the kitchen, dimly lit by the single overhead lamp, Zoe couldn't shake the feeling that Maddy's shadows stretched longer than the night. And even as Caleb chopped vegetables for a simple stir-fry, Zoe's phone buzzed quietly in the living room, a silent echo of Maddy's text, "Let me know when you've made an appointment." Zoe watched the string of words hover on her screen in the darkness, a reminder that the peace they attempted to reclaim was only temporary. She slipped the phone into her pocket, steeling herself. She would protect her marriage, her career, and her dreams, no matter the cost. But as she stirred the sizzling onions in the skillet, her eyes flicked to Caleb's steady profile, and she wondered whether the next sunrise would find them stronger or fractured beyond repair. The neon sign of the Seabrook Jazz Lounge flickered a muted indigo glow over the slick pavement of Pike Street, the rain-slick reflections dancing in erratic patterns.
Inside,
the lounge exuded an intimate ambience, deep burgundy velvet banquettes, dim amber sconces, and a small elevated stage draped with dark green curtains that framed a lone Steinway piano. A trio performed a languid ballad, saxophone, upright bass, and brushed drums, each note weaving a sultry thread of sound through the haze of low-hanging fog machines. On a crisp Thursday evening, Caleb Parker sat alone in a snug corner table, nursing an aged Manhattan. His tie was loosened, the top button of his Oxford shirt unfastened. He scrolled through an email on his phone, jaw set in concentration, trying to beige out the lingering tension at home. Just hours earlier, he'd arrived late to dinner after Zoe, and he had done battle over Maddy's manipulations. He'd tried, genuinely, to reassure her, promising quality time, but the specter of Maddy's constant helpful intrusions had left Zoe restless. He needed a mental break. The lounge's sultry music had beckoned him. A subtle tap on his shoulder drew his gaze upward. Maddy Rivers, poised and immaculate in a tailored black velvet-wrapped dress and strappy heels, slipped into the seat opposite him. The slickness of her honey-blonde hair, twisted into a loose chignon, contrasted starkly with her midnight lipstick. Her designer clutch gleamed under the low lamplight. "Caleb," she murmured, leaning forward. Her voice was a husky whisper, warm but edged with steel. "So good to see you here." Caleb's brows knitted.
Maddy.
"Didn't realize you'd be in town this week." He motioned to the waitress for another drink. "What brings you to the Seabrook?" Maddy offered an artful smile, sliding a glossy business card across the table. "I wanted to talk to you about some promotional work. My team's putting together a charity gala next month, and I'd love to feature some of your sustainable development projects. The event's beneficiary is a new habitat restoration program near Puget Sound." Caleb glanced down at the card, scanning the glossy print. He was flattered. His firm had indeed been advocating eco-friendly building designs, and this gala could elevate his reputation. He pocketed the card. "That's unexpected. I appreciate the offer." Maddy tilted her head, her eyes locking with his. "I think it'd be perfect. I know you're passionate about preserving our waterways." She laid a hand on his forearm, just enough to brush his skin. "You could make a huge difference." Caleb stiffened at the contact, though he didn't pull away. "I need to check my schedule. My firm has a few deadlines next month." "Of course," Maddy replied, retracting her hand in a flourish. "But let's talk tonight. I flew in specifically to see you." Her tone left no room for a casual decline. Caleb studied her expression, the genuine luster in her eyes, the finely arched eyebrow that hinted at expectation. He shifted uncomfortably, but took a sip of his cocktail to steady himself. "Okay, let's talk," he conceded. Maddy's eyes glittered triumphantly. "Great." She signaled to the waitress. "2 more Manhattans, please, neat." The waitress hurried off, and Maddy leaned in, her low voice seamlessly blending with the jazz ambience. "I've heard so much about your work from your mother. Maggie says you're a creative engineer." She offered a sweet smile. "We both know you're the creative force behind every one of those Gramercy West developments." Caleb cleared his throat. "Mom's supportive." "But Zoe," he trailed off, conflicted. "Tonight's about the gala. You flew in, so let's talk details." He began outlining potential venues and logistics. Maddy interrupted him once at least, when a drummer's solo crescendo briefly stole his attention. She leaned forward, so that her shoulder brushed his. "You know," she whispered, "it's been lonely for me in Chicago." Her voice dipped to a confessional timbre. "I thought a fresh start here might help. I didn't realize how much I missed Washington until I saw your mom's cafe again." Caleb met her gaze, the faintest flicker of sympathy passing over his face. I'm glad you're back." "But Zoe," he paused. "Zoe's been feeling a lot of pressure with the fertility, you know how it is. I just want to make sure our priorities align." Maddy's eyes glinted with satisfaction. Of course. But Caleb, you're so smart and talented. You deserve someone who sees that. Someone who supports your dreams." She placed a gentle palm on his hand, sliding her fingers over his. "I'm here for you always." Caleb's expression tightened, but he nodded. "Thanks," he said. Withdrawing his hand, though, he didn't entirely shake off the warmth of her touch. About the gala. He continued discussing logistics, barely noticing the drift of time. Maddy was adept at flirting. A subtle touch here, an attentive nod there, leavened with carefully placed compliments. She spoke of the charity's potential, her own philanthropic ventures, even painting a vivid tableau of glittering guests and media coverage. All the while, Maddy's proximity felt charged with unspoken intent. As the second jazz set began, Maddy's eyes flicked to the keyboardist, waiting for the tune's sultry finish. When the pianist hit a low, rolling riff, Maddy rose gracefully from her seat. "Let's dance," she murmured, extending a hand. Caleb hesitated, flustered by the request. He glanced at a cluster of mid-level executives near the bar, Seattle's business elite, chatting and toasting. The spotlight of potential scrutiny made him swallow hard.
Maddy.
Zoe and I, tonight was supposed to be about us. But, okay. Reluctantly, he rose and took her hand. Maddy guided him to the small dance floor in front of the stage. The trio transitioned into a slow, brushstroke ballad filled with echoing bass notes and soft cymbal washes. They swayed together, Maddy's head resting on Caleb's shoulder as he cradled her waist. Their breathing synchronized to the jazzy rhythm, and for a moment, Caleb's lips twitched into a faint, uncertain smile. The warmth of her body against his felt like a balm against his stress. Around them, patrons looked on, some with curiosity, others with appreciative approval of the lounge's ambience. Maddy's perfectly manicured nails grazed the nape of his neck. Caleb stood still, though one arm tightened around her back. A flash of guilt shot through him. Zoe's face, when she'd found out about Chloe in Part 5. He tried to release himself, but Maddy tugged him closer. "Caleb," she murmured in his ear, her breath flecked with honeyed sweetness. "I've missed this. Being held by you." She closed her eyes, letting the dim lights cocoon them. Caleb's pulse hammered. "Maddy," he managed, trying to extricate himself. "We should go." He swallowed the stirring emotions. Nostalgia for a closeness he once shared with her, adrenaline from midnight whispers, and a growing realization that even in this intimacy, something was profoundly wrong. But Maddy wouldn't let go. "Just one song," she insisted, pressing closer. "I want to feel that magic again." As the keyboardist unveiled a wandering, mournful riff, Maddy tightened her arms around him. Heart pounding, Caleb gave a hollow nod, resigning himself to the charade. To disengage might leave him looking callous or arrogant. He tried to steal his heart, centering on Maddy's motives rather than her silky hair or her soft sighs. Meanwhile, upstairs in the Parker home, Zoe sat on their plush gray sectional, wrapping a cashmere blanket around her shoulders. The front door was locked, seemingly secure, but her phone buzzed incessantly, a new text thread from an unsaved number. When she opened it, her pulse froze. A photo, a low-resolution, grainy image of Caleb and Maddy from behind, snapshots taken mid-dance at a dimly lit jazz lounge. They were entwined, heads tilted together, bodies close. A caption scrawled in white over the image. "They can never hide the truth. Always watchful." Zoe stared at the photo, anger and heartbreak surging like wildfire. Her vision blurred as tears welled up. She passed her hand over the screen. He's dancing with her all night, apparently. Anger boiled in her veins, equal parts betrayal, confusion, and disbelief. Why is she doing this? She thought. Why would he let this happen? A second text slipped in. "Look who left early tonight. Maybe Maddy needed more than a dance." Attached was another blurred image, Caleb leaning in close to Maddy's ear, whispering. Maddy's lips were inches from his cheek. The lighting was dim, the setting unmistakably jazzy, the K-Leighton decor of the Seabrook evident in the backdrop. Zoe's vision tunneled. Her heart pounded so fiercely she felt she might collapse. Rather than call Caleb, he might lie, she reasoned. Zoe opened Instagram and posted a fleeting story, a single frame of the first text image. Tagging, #TrustNoOne, followed by a single frowning emoji. Within seconds, her phone vibrated with DMs from friends worried about rumors she'd been feeling pressured. No one knew what was happening. If they believed her post, they might encourage her to confront Caleb. Instead, Zoe dropped the phone onto the coffee table, pressed her palms to her face, and let the tears flow. She tried to steady her breath. She thought, he said he'd be responsible. He said we needed to be a team. She felt the weight of betrayal sharper than the chill of Seattle's early spring breeze. Back at the Seabrook, the pianist closed the set with a haunting diminuendo. Caleb stilled, lowering Maddy's hand from his neck. "Maddy," he said, his voice a barely controlled whisper. "We should go." He touched her upper arm, gently guiding her off the dance floor. Maddy released him, stepping back with a perfectly practiced tilt of her chin. She raised a conspiratorial eyebrow. You and Zoe seem so tense lately. I thought tonight might help you relax. Caleb bristled. We have things to figure out at home. Thank you for dinner, but he paused, glancing at the lounge's exit. I'm sorry, I need to get home. Maddy's lips formed a surprised, oh, but her eyes held a flicker of triumph. Of course. Let me at least buy you a coffee to go? She reached for his hand, this time with an earnest air of assistance. You look like you need something to clear the head. Caleb stared at her for a long moment.
No, thank you.
He stepped past her, his shoes clicking on the hardwood, making a staccato echo across the lounge. Maddy rose, her smile never flickering. She slipped back into her seat at the table, signaling for the waitress. The second the waitress arrived, Maddy ordered a strong espresso and examined her phone. With a quick series of taps, she manipulated the timestamp and brightness of the low-resolution photos she'd taken, then broadcast them to a burner number that forwarded them in a group text to +1 206 555 3012, an anonymous distribution that included Zoe's Instagram handle, Zoe's close friends, and one other contact, a throwaway private detective she'd hired for marketing research. Within seconds, the distraught image was everywhere. After paying her check, Maddy exited the Seabrook into the drizzle. She paused under the neon marquee and glanced back at the entrance as Caleb's silhouette sputtered past the glass doors. His posture was tense, his shoulders hunched, as though carrying a burden. Inside, the patrons had resumed their conversations, perhaps catching the echoes of hushed gossip as Maddy slipped unseen into the night. Home again, Zoe curled on the sectional with her phone pressed to her ear, leaving the faint hum of jazz from an old Bluetooth speaker playing the same trio track as in the lounge. Her fingers trembled as she typed a single text. Where are you? Seconds stretched. When her phone buzzed with an incoming text, she read it with a dread-laced fascination. At the Seabrook Jazz Lounge. Should have told you I was going out tonight. The photo, pinned at the top, showed Caleb's dark silhouette against Maddy's gleaming hair. In low resolution, it conveyed an unmistakable intimacy. Her breath caught, vision blurred, and she felt the walls close in. In the next text, Maddy had already typed, I thought I'd help you see that sometimes the truth is a harsh melody. Can't hide forever. Lower on Zoe's screen, a stream of Instagram DMs had exploded. Is this Cal cheating? Girl, I'm so sorry. Let me know if you need anything. I'll stand by you, Zoe. Overwhelmed, Zoe dropped the phone onto the plush rug and slid to the floor, pressing trembling hands over her ears as though to block out sensation. Rain drummed a steady patter against the window behind her, the mid-city lights muted by the spray. Inside, the front door unlocked with a soft click. Zoe pressed herself against the ottoman, head bowed. Her chest convulsed with sobs as Caleb stepped inside, a drip of rainwater tracing a line down his collar. Zoe, he said, voice fraught. He closed the door behind him. I'm home. She looked up, her eyes rimmed with raw hurt, and let out a half-gasping sob. So Maddy decided to send me that photo. Huh? She choked. Texted me everything. Caleb's mouth formed a tight line.
Zoe.
Those photos, she manipulated the timestamps. It wasn't what it looks like. He crossed the room and knelt before her. I promise you. Zoe wiped her tears with the sleeve of her sweater. Promise? How many times have I heard that word? You said you'd prioritize me, this marriage, and we'd figure this out together. But you go to that lounge and I see you and her, and now I know what's in your heart. Her voice trembled, her gaze fierce. If you cared about us, you wouldn't be there in the first place. Caleb's shoulders sagged. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes haunted. It's not about her.
I swear.
I'm not in love with her. But I thought I could handle seeing her again, but it was messy. I came to just talk about the gala. I wasn't cheating. Just talk. Zoe's laugh was brittle. Holding hands? Whispering? dancing slowly while I stayed home wondering if you even cared enough to call. Tears streamed down her cheeks. You tell me you love me, and then you stand in a refracted neon glow with her. And now I don't know anything. Caleb reached for her, but she flinched. Zoe, please. He knelt, searching her eyes. I know I messed up, but Maddy set me up. She wanted you to see it. I'm sorry I didn't kiss you goodbye. I'm sorry I didn't call. He exhaled, swallowing. I wanted to surprise you this weekend, take you to Bellingham for a walk on the waterfront, catch up. But all this, it's unraveling everything. Zoe wiped her face with the back of her hand, shaky. I want to believe you. I love you. I still love you. But I can't face another week of not knowing if I can trust you. And I can't let Maddy poison my relationship. Do you have any idea how much this hurts? I do, Caleb said softly, lifting her chin so she'd meet his eyes. Maddy's dangerous. And she's determined to break us. But I need you to believe me. Let's prove it to you. I'll give you my phone records, iMessage logs, call history, Uber receipts, whatever you want. But please, Zoe, don't make decisions based on her lies. Zoe's gaze softened, though torment still clouded her eyes. I need time to sort this out. I need to know you're really here for me, no games. She pushed her feet, wrapping the cashmere blanket tighter around her. I'm stepping out for a walk. I need air. Caleb rose, inhaling sharply. Let me. No, Zoe said firmly. I'll be back. She slipped on her sneakers, grabbed her rain jacket, and nearly sprinted to the front door. Without looking back, she slipped out into the night, her world a blur of neon reflections and swirling rain. Inside, Caleb sank to his knees, head resting in his hands. He stared at the smeared footprints on the hardwood, Zoe's escape route. Cold fear of losing her clutched at his heart. Pulling out his phone, he tapped on Maddy's number and hesitated, thumb poised over the dial button. He didn't call her. Instead, he texted, "This ends tonight. I love her. Don't play games with us again." He slammed the phone onto the ottoman, burying his face in his arms. The distant wail of a Seattle hooter signaled that the evening was nearly over. But for Caleb Parker, one more battle had just begun, one that might save his marriage, or else shatter the fragile trust left between him and the woman he loved. The rain had finally let up by the time Zoe Parker pulled onto her own driveway, the dark sky still pulsing with distant thunder. Mist clung to the pavement, and the porch light halo glowed in the damp night. She stepped out of her car, her rain jacket pulled tight, and headed to the front door, where a single white envelope lay on the welcome mat. She knelt and picked it up, peering inside to find a succinct, unembellished USB drive and a handwritten note in Caleb's neat script. Zoe, check this when you get home. I love you. Caleb. Zoe's throat tightened. She pocketed the drive, unlocked the door, and slipped inside. The house was dim, a single lamp casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. She placed her keys on the side table and flicked on the living room light. On the sofa sat Caleb, visibly exhausted, his sleeves rolled up, tie removed and thrown on the floor, feet bare. He looked up as she entered, his face a mix of relief and anxiety. Hey, he said softly, standing to face her. You came back safely. Zoe didn't return his greeting. Instead, she held up the USB drive. What is this? Her voice trembled despite her best efforts to sound composed. Caleb swallowed and reached out, placing a gentle hand on the drive. I recorded the entire night at the Seabrook Jazz Lounge. The bar's security camera footage confirms what really happened and what didn't. Zoe's eyes narrowed. What didn't happen, Caleb? She shot back, stepping closer until they were only feet apart. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Caleb took a breath. I need you to watch this before you say anything else. He set the drive on the coffee table, then pressed a button on the TV remote, causing the screen to flicker and the login menu for the home media interface to appear. He inserted the USB drive into a slot on the side of the console. A series of folders popped up. Seabrook_night_10 p.m. MP4, Seabrook_11pm.mp4, and so on. Zoe's hand gripped the edge of the table. Just play the first one. Caleb selected the file labeled Seabrook_dance_footage, MP4, and within seconds, the screen showed a grainy yet recognizable image of the Jazz Lounge's dance floor. The camera angle was high, angled down from the ceiling, capturing the entire stage area. In the footage, the bar's dim spotlights cast long shadows, but the scene was unmistakable. Maddy Rivers stood center frame, wearing the same black velvet wrap dress Zoe had glimpsed. She held Caleb's hand as they stepped onto the dance floor, their bodies close. The crowd was sparse as the trio on stage launched into a slow, moody ballad. Over the saxophone's haunting notes, Maddy draped her arm around Caleb's neck, guiding him in a slow turn. Caleb's posture was stiff, his face tense. He looked down as Maddy smiled, leaning in to whisper in his ear. Zoe's breath caught. The image on the screen exactly matched her worst fears. For a split second, she allowed herself to believe the worst. Then the clip jumped forward several seconds. Maddy's hand slid from his shoulder down to his upper back, soothing yet possessive. Caleb's eyes darted away from the camera, and instead of leaning closer, he abruptly turned his torso, stepping back. He gently pushed Maddy's hand away, the motion unmistakable. Maddy's face registered surprise, even irritation, as Caleb took a small, decisive step away from her. Then the screen jumped to another angle, a closer shot of the bar's front corner. Zoe saw a distantly angled camera focus on Caleb as he crossed the dance floor, his gaze directed at the bar. Maddy jogged after him, an act that mirrored eagerness. But before she reached him, Caleb turned and strode toward the exit, leaving Maddy alone, her hand hovering where his had rested. Zoe felt her chest tighten, tears pressing behind her lids. She leaned in, rewinding to catch the moment again. Maddy and Caleb swaying for one song, then Caleb's unmistakable withdrawal. The timestamp in the corner read 10:15 p.m. She fast-forwarded to see what happened next. Caleb left the dance floor. Maddy continued dancing by herself, occasionally glancing toward the entrance, as if disappointed. Caleb then approached the bar, where he paid his tab in cash, turned, and exited the lounge. Maddy circled the bar, waiting. Finally, she stepped out alone, her eyes briefly scanning the sidewalk before she disappeared into the night. Zoe sat back, her hands trembling and her head spinning. The narrative Maddy had spun, a romantic one last dance, was partially true, but far from the story Maddy had texted. In the footage, Caleb had clearly backed away at Maddy's advance. He had not kissed or embraced her, nor had there been any hint of physical infidelity. Maddy had merely staged the scene and then quietly exited after him, ensuring that any lurker with a phone camera could snap a distorted snapshot. Zoe's vision blurred as tears rolled down her cheeks. She wiped them away, swallowing hard. "So, that's it?" she whispered. "That's your so-called cozy moment." Caleb dismounted from the sofa and moved toward her, awkward in his damp shoes. "Zoe, I didn't get close to her. I was trying to shut the whole situation down." He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I should have told you I was going out. I'm sorry I kept it from you. But I never wanted to do what Maddy implied." He broke off, unsure how to describe Maddy's manipulation. Zoe turned to face him, her green eyes red-rimmed but clear. "She engineered it to look scandalous and sent me photos out of context. She wanted me to believe you were cheating so you'd break things off with me, or so she could step into the void." Caleb nodded, the weight of relief and fury mingling in his expression. "She has always been competitive. She's had a bigger career," but he exhaled. "We never had anything romantic, Zoe. I never gave her that permission. Not once." Zoe pressed her thumb to her lips. "So, why didn't you show me this earlier?" "I wanted to wait until things cooled down at home. I planned to surprise you with this evidence today, but I underestimated how far Maddy would go. I thought if I told you right away, you'd still have all that hurt and I'd lose even more trust." He stepped closer, voice earnest. "But I see now how wrong I was."
I'm sorry.
"Truly. Zoe exhaled, averting her gaze as she digested his words. The tension in her shoulders loosened, though the ache of betrayal still throbbed. She swallowed. I'll delete that Instagram story. I want to handle this privately. I don't want the neighborhood chirping about it. Caleb reached out and hugged her gently, tucking her head under his chin. She clutched at his waist, feeling the warmth he offered. The moment felt fragile, like the final brush of a candle's flame before it either flared back to life or flared out completely. In the doorway behind them, the porch light clicked on. Maggie had arrived, returning from a late-night church meeting with her book club. She carried a small paper bag of leftover pastries from a neighbor's event. As she stepped inside, she paused, noticing the embrace on the sofa. "Maggie," Zoe exclaimed softly, stepping out of Caleb's arms before Maggie could worry. "I'm sorry. This is going to look strange. I found out what happened tonight." Maggie placed the pastry bag on the low table and swept her fingers through her silver-streaked hair.
Zoe?
Her voice trembled as she took in her daughter-in-law's tear-streaked face and Caleb's tense stance. "Honey, what?" Caleb took a step toward Maggie, his shoulders sagging with fatigue.
Mom.
"I need to explain. Please sit." He gestured to the couch. Maggie perched on the edge of a nearby ottoman while Caleb and Zoe stood before her. Caleb opened his palms in a silent plea as he spoke. "Maddy manipulated things tonight. She took photos of me and made it look like we were more than we were. In reality, I stepped away as soon as I realized what she was doing. I brought a USB drive home, a copy of the bar's security footage. Watch it for yourselves." Maggie's brow furrowed as Caleb retrieved the USB drive and plugged it into the TV. The same Seabrook_dance_ footage, MP4, appeared on screen. As the footage played, showing Caleb's polite withdrawal from Maddy's embrace, Maggie's hand glided to her mouth, her eyes widening. She really did that?" Maggie whispered, brow knitting tighter. "Why would she?" Zoe, still trembling, tossed a glance at Caleb. He nodded, and she pressed pause on the remote. The frame froze on the exact moment when Maddy reached for his shoulder, and he backed away. Maggie exhaled loudly, relief and anger mingling in her expression. "I can't believe I ever," Maggie's voice cracked. She looked up at Zoe, tears brimming in her eyes. "Honey, I'm sorry I questioned you. I asked if you were too busy. I let Maddy's insinuations get to me." Zoe wiped her tears on her sleeve, stepping toward Maggie. "Mom, it's not your fault. Maddy's professional. They used security footage she got from a friend at the bar, then doctored the timestamps. She sent me the still images, and I believed them. I'm sorry for all the worry I caused." Maggie placed a gentle hand on Zoe's shoulder. "It's not your fault, dear. You believed what you saw." Caleb replaced the laptop's focus on the blank home screen. "I'll handle Maddy. I'll tell her never to contact us again. And I'm going to make amends with you, honey. I promise." Maggie dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "It hurts me that I nearly lost faith in you. But I'm proud of how you both handled this. You stood up to Deceit." Zoe exhaled, feeling the storm inside her calm finally. She wrapped her arms around Caleb and Maggie in a hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing me." In the quiet that followed, the Parker home felt like a sanctuary again, imperfect, but rooted in honesty. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the first hints of dawn's light glimmered through the kitchen window. Tomorrow would be a new day. Maddy's last chance to manipulate them ended here, with the truth laid bare. And for now, Zoe and Caleb embraced the fragile peace they'd reclaimed, knowing that while betrayal could strike at any time, so too could forgiveness and trust, if nurtured by truth. 3 months later, a soft golden light filtered through the curtains of the Parker household, illuminating the cheerful chaos of a Saturday morning. The front door stood open to a gentle Puget Sound breeze, carrying the faint scent of lavender and salt water. Inside, the Parker home buzzed with the quiet hum of renewed life. Maggie humming as she poured coffee in the kitchen, Zoe flipping pancakes with a practiced hand, and Caleb leaning over the counter, helping Mia color a picture of their family at Discovery Park. The last time tensions had threatened to unravel them, the memory of Maddy's deceit still lingered like a stubborn shadow. But through honest conversations, shared tears, and genuine apologies, the Parker family had found its way back to center. Maggie spent evenings crafting heartfelt latte designs for her cafe and afternoons volunteering at a local charity event, reminded daily that wholesome love and integrity always outlive manipulation. Zoe and Caleb had reestablished the rhythm of their marriage. No more unspoken resentments, no more secrets. Their agreement to always inform each other of late nights and social engagements had become a non-negotiable pillar of trust. Zoe's career thrived with the lively support of Caleb and Maggie. She had taken over the cafe's social media strategy, designing vivid brand campaigns that doubled weekend traffic. Meanwhile, Caleb's passion for sustainable architecture led to a contract for a mixed-use housing project near Lake Union, a sign that their professional and personal lives could harmoniously coexist. On this particular morning, Zoe flicked a graceful glance at her reflection in the kitchen window. She wore a pale blue maternity sweater that hugged the curve of her growing belly. 3 words still felt miraculous when she spoke them. "We're having another baby." The day they'd learned they were expecting, after 6 months of careful planning, their joy had felt like a chorus rising in unison. Now, 8 weeks into her second trimester, Zoe welcomed the gentle flutter of life inside her, and the promise of new beginnings danced in her heart. Mia, now 4, sat on a stack of placemats at the counter. She held a stubby yellow marker, outlining stick figures clad in bright dresses. "Mama, is this you?" she asked, indicating one of the figures wearing a heart-shaped necklace. Zoe ruffled Mia's curls and kissed her forehead. "Yes, sweetheart. And this is Daddy," she replied, tapping the figure beside it, a slightly taller stick figure with a plaid pattern drawn on its torso. Then Zoe pointed to a taller empty space. "And here is our new baby, your little brother or sister." Mia's eyes widened. "Is it a boy or girl?" "Soon we'll find out at the next doctor's appointment," Zoe answered. "But for now, you can decide whether it's a boy or girl. Do you think it's a baby brother?"
Mia frowned in concentration.
"I think it's a baby brother." Zoe's heart swelled. "I think so too." She kissed her daughter's cheek once more. "Now, are you ready for breakfast?" "Yay!" Mia's squeal brought laughter from both parents. Zoe slid pancakes onto a plate, perfectly golden and steaming with maple syrup. She handed one to Mia, then shared a knowing glance with Caleb, who grinned back as he poured orange juice into plastic cups. Later that morning, Caleb directed a delivery of blue balloons and pastel decorations arriving at Sound and Grounds, where Maggie was hosting a baby shower brunch. In the cafe's sunflower yellow back room, a crowd of 50 or so neighbors, friends, and extended family had gathered. Long tables draped with white linens displayed an assortment of spring-colored quiches, smoked salmon platters, fruit tarts, and Maggie's signature lavender lattes. A handmade banner, welcoming baby Parker, hung proudly from the ceiling. Maggie hovered near the entrance, greeting each guest with a warm embrace. She wore a blush pink cardigan and a jade pendant, a gift from Zoe on her last birthday. In that ebb of excitement, Maggie felt a wash of contentment. The potholes of mistrust had been filled, and the road ahead was crystalline with promise. Zoe, sporting a classic navy maternity dress with tiny white daisies, walked into the room hand in hand with Caleb. Mia trailed behind, clutching a stuffed lamb she would soon pass on to her sibling. The guests applauded, clinking forks against champagne glasses filled with sparkling cider. "Look at you, Mama," Mia whispered, pointing at her rounded belly. "I can't wait to meet my baby brother." Zoe knelt to hug her. "I can't wait either." She exchanged a brief, loving smile with Caleb. "Thank you all for coming. It means so much that you're here to celebrate with us." Caleb raised his glass. "To our growing family and to the bright days ahead." Glasses chimed, and the room filled with laughter and lively conversation. Maggie stepped forward with a stack of small envelopes. "I have a little game for everyone," she announced. Whoever guesses baby Parker's birth date accurately wins a free month of free coffee, courtesy of me. She scanned the crowd with twinkling eyes. Write your guess on a slip of paper and drop it in the jar by the door. The winner will be announced after the baby arrives. The guests dutifully rushed to scribble dates, some promising colorful cakes, others heartfelt messages about sibling bonds. Meanwhile, Zoe sat at the center of a semicircle of wooden chairs, passing around photo albums of her and Caleb's wedding, Mia's first steps in Ballard, and the floor plans Caleb had drafted for their next home. At one point, Maggie's old college friend, Susan Roberts, leaned in. "Zoe, you must be glowing. I'm so happy for you." Susan's silver-streak hair was tied in a low ponytail, and her radiance spoke of decades of friendships tested and proven. "How are you feeling? Any morning sickness?" Zoe laughed softly. "A little queasy in the mornings, but nothing I can't handle. I've been eating pancakes for breakfast, doctor's orders." She patted her belly, adding conspiratorially, "Caleb has become a pro at making bacon and eggs, so he can take over when I can't make it to the stove." Caleb feigned a swagger. "I've got a 5-star rating now." Laughter bubbled from the nearby guests. In that moment, Zoe looked at him, really looked, and felt her heart beat with a renewed depth of love and gratitude. The man who had stumbled through the shoals of mistrust had emerged stronger, more devoted than ever. After a round of toasts, Luke Parker, now 25 and reframed by his own journey, working at Maggie's cafe and studying night courses to finish his degree, stepped forward. He'd grown out his dark hair and traded his loan shark hustle for an earnest pursuit of design college. "Ahem," he began, clearing his throat. "I know I have a lot to make up for after last year. I owe so much to each of you for your support. And now, I want to share that I've accepted a full-time position as a junior architect at a firm downtown. So, baby brother is going to enter a world where He paused, tears welling in his eyes. "Where I'm finally on the right path. Congratulations, Zoe and Caleb. You deserve every moment of happiness ahead." The room broke into enthusiastic applause. Zoe reached over and squeezed Luke's hand, her chest warming. "I'm so proud of you, Luke. You've earned every bit of this." As the afternoon sun began to dip, casting warm beams through the cafe windows, a hush fell when Maggie called for a final toast. She raised her lavender latte glass, mocktails for the pregnant mother-to-be, and proclaimed, "To love that endures all things, to second chances, and to new beginnings." A ripple of joyful cheers echoed in the space, clinking against the glowing wood. And in that luminous moment, amidst warm embraces and affectionate glances, the Parker family felt a sense of wholeness few circumstances could fracture. 6 months later, the Parker home was bathed in early spring sunlight. Petals of dogwood blossoms drifted outside the windows like confetti. Inside, Zoe Parker held a swaddled bundle in her arms, a newborn boy with a tuft of dark hair and a tiny button nose. She burped him, pressing his head gently against her shoulder as he cooed in contentment. Caleb stood nearby, wrapping a soft white blanket snugly around the baby. He looked up at Zoe with tears glistening in his blue eyes. "He's perfect, Zoe," he whispered, voice brimming with wonder. Zoe smiled, fatigue softening into pure joy. "Liam Parker," she said, cooing. "You're finally here, my sweet baby boy." Liam yawned, revealing a dimpled chin as his dark eyes blinked to focus on his parents' faces. His arrival had been smooth, 6 hours of early labor and a healthy delivery at Puget General Hospital. Now, as Zoe traced the curve of Liam's first blanket, she marveled at how love could multiply, filling every crevice of her heart. Mia, now 5 and a steadfast big sister, peered around the edge of the hospital's birthing suite, her mother's hair still mussed. Her cheeks flushed from an all-night vigil. "Mama, can I hold him?" she asked, shy excitement bubbling through her voice. Zoe cradled Liam closer to her chest and lifted her hand to jade her daughter's curls. "Of course, sweet girl." She sat back in the recliner, positioning Liam so Mia could gently place a hand on his tiny head. Tears shone in Mia's bright eyes as she whispered, "Hi, Liam. I love you, little brother." Caleb moved to smooth Liam's blanket and positioned Mia on a chair between him and Zoe. "He loves you, too," he said, his arm around Mia's shoulder. "You're his big sister, after all." In the soft morning glow, Maggie emerged into the hallway, her favorite jade pendant resting against a floral print blouse. She'd been grabbing breakfast sandwiches from the hospital cafeteria and couldn't resist popping in to see the new grandson. Upon entering, she paused to take in the tableau. Zoe and Caleb united in awe, Mia beaming with tenderness, and baby Liam peacefully drifting in sleep. Tears welled in Maggie's eyes as she set the tray down. "May I hold him?" she asked reverently. Caleb nodded, and Maggie took Liam in her arms like he was etched from sunlight and dreams. She gently stroked his cheek. "He's perfect, just like you two." Zoe reached over and intertwined her fingers with Caleb's. "We're happier than we've ever been," she said, voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything, Mom." Maggie kissed Liam's forehead. "Thank you for forgiving me, for trusting him. We've all come so far." Zoe laughed softly, tears spilling over. "I have the greatest teachers in the world, Maggie. You taught me how to find joy in every little moment." She looked deeply into Caleb's eyes. "And you taught me how to trust again." Caleb smiled, a tear sliding down his cheek. "I love you both. And now our son." He gently touched Liam's hand. "Welcome to our imperfect, beautiful family." As the sun angled through the window, casting soft patterns on the floor, the Parker couple, their two children, and Maggie formed a quiet family circle, a perfect portrait of hope, forgiveness, and enduring love. Outside, the dogwood petals drifted toward the tranquil waters of Puget Sound. And inside that hospital room, the Parker family welcomed their most precious gift, Liam Parker, into a world where commitment triumphed over deception, and where every new heartbeat echoed with the rhythm of fresh beginnings. Their story had come full circle, from fractured trust and painful doubt to warm reunification and the sweet lullaby of newborn breath. As evening settled in over Seattle and the city lights blinked softly, the Parker home, and their hearts glowed with a promise that love, when tended with honesty and grace, could mend even the deepest wounds and usher in life's most radiant chapters. And that brings us to the end of today's story on TrueStory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.